There is a particular kind of quiet that falls on a Sunday evening. It isn't peaceful. It is a heavy silence, filled with the ghosts of the weekend and the looming shadow of the week to come. The last rays of sunlight fade, and a familiar, low-grade hum of anxiety begins to vibrate just beneath the surface of things. It's in the blue light of the phone you can't seem to put down, scrolling through lives that appear so seamless, so complete. It's in the sudden awareness of your own breathing, a little too shallow, a little too fast. This feeling, this quiet dread, is one of the most common, yet most isolating experiences of our time. We might call it stress, or anxiety, or burnout, but these are just names for a deeper condition. It is the spiritual exhaustion of a world that never stops demanding, a world that has taught us to measure our worth by our productivity, by our possessions, by the relentless pursuit of more. We are living in a silent pandemic of the soul. We have built a civilization of unparalleled technological connection, yet we feel more disconnected than ever, mostly from ourselves. We chase happiness in the next promotion, the next purchase, the next vacation, believing that peace is a destination we must race toward. But the finish line keeps moving. The more we acquire, the more we have to lose. The more we achieve, the higher the stakes become. We are caught in a frantic cycle of doing, striving, and wanting, and it is leaving us empty. This isn't a personal failure. You are not broken or inadequate for feeling this way. You are a sensitive human being responding to a world that is running a fever, a world that has forgotten a fundamental truth. But what if there was another way? A path that doesn't require you to run faster, but to simply stop. A path that doesn't point outward to the next shiny object, but inward to the vast, quiet landscape of your own mind. For thousands of years, there has existed a body of wisdom, a kind of science of the mind, that addresses this very condition. It is not a religion you must convert to, or a set of dogmas you must believe. It is a set of practical tools, a map, left behind by others who have walked this path before. It is the wisdom of Buddhism, a timeless guide to understanding the nature of our own minds and to finding a profound and unshakable peace right in the middle of the storm. This is a journey to learn that deep within you, beneath all the noise, there is a space of perfect stillness. It is a journey to learn how to listen to that silence and to what it knows. Before we can even begin to speak of peace, we must first become aware of the nature of the noise that obscures it. The noise of the 21st century is not merely a matter of decibels. It is not the sound of traffic or construction or the television in the other room. That is only the surface layer. The more pervasive, more intrusive noise is one that follows us everywhere, even into the presumed sanctuary of our own homes, our own beds. It is a storm of information, a hurricane of stimulation, a constant, unrelenting digital and emotional static that has become the soundtrack to our lives. Think of how your day begins. It is likely not with a moment of quiet reflection, but with the shrill cry of an alarm, an invention designed to jolt you out of a natural state and into an artificial urgency. And what is the first instinct? For millions, it is to reach for the phone. Before your feet have even touched the floor, your mind is already being flooded. News of distant tragedies, political arguments, curated images of other people's successes, and an endless cascade of emails, notifications, and reminders of all the things you have yet to do. You are consuming a day's worth of emotional and intellectual data before you have even had a sip of water. This is the first wave of noise, and it sets the tone for everything that follows. As you move through your day, the waves keep crashing. At work, there is the pressure to be constantly available, to respond instantly, to multitask beyond the limits of human focus. Our value is often measured by our responsiveness, creating a culture where the mind is never allowed to settle. We are conditioned to see a full inbox as a crisis and an empty calendar as a sign of irrelevance. This is the noise of productivity, the relentless hum of a machine that we have become a part of. And woven through all of it is the noise of consumerism, the most subtle and perhaps most powerful of all. Every advertisement, every influencer post, every billboard carries a single underlying message. You are not enough as you are. You are lacking. You need this product. this experience, this lifestyle to be complete, to be happy, to be worthy. It is a noise that creates a perpetual state of desire and dissatisfaction, a hunger that can never truly be filled. This external ocean of noise inevitably seeps inward, creating its own chaotic weather system inside our minds. In Buddhist teachings, this internal state is often described with a vivid metaphor, the monkey mind. Imagine a monkey, restless by nature. Now, imagine this monkey is drunk, making it even more erratic. Then, imagine it has been stung by a scorpion, adding pain and panic to its frenzy. This is our untrained mind. It swings violently from one thought branch to another, from a memory of the past to a worry about the future, to a judgment about the present, to a fantasy, to a fear. It never rests. It is a constant, chattering monologue of commentary, planning, and regret. Perhaps you have experienced this yourself. You decide you need a break. You go for a walk in nature, or you sit in a quiet room and close your eyes, seeking a moment of peace. And what happens? The inner noise becomes deafening. The silence of the room only amplifies the chaos in your head. Worries you had forgotten suddenly scream for attention. Embarrassing memories from years ago play on a loop. The mental to-do list unspools endlessly. This experience can be deeply discouraging. We think, I am failing at being calm. I am broken. But this is a profound misunderstanding. You are not failing. You are simply, for the first time, becoming truly aware of the monkey mind's frantic dance. You have not created the noise. You have only stopped drowning it out with external distractions. Seeing this inner chaos is not a sign of failure. It is the very first step toward freedom. This brings us to a crucial re-evaluation of what silence truly is. Our culture tends to define silence as an absence of sound, an external condition. We seek it by buying noise-canceling headphones or escaping to a remote cabin. But as the monkey mind demonstrates, you can be in the quietest place on earth and still find yourself in the middle of a psychic riot. True silence, the silence that heals and clarifies, is not an external condition to be found, but an internal quality to be cultivated. It is not about the absence of noise, but about changing your relationship to it. It is an island of stillness that you learn to build within yourself, an island that can exist even in the middle of a stormy sea. There is a classic story that illustrates this perfectly. A man, desperate for peace, sought the wisest Zen master in the land and asked him, "Master, where can I find the quietest place in the world?" The master told him of a cave deep in the mountains, far from any village. The man journeyed for weeks, found the cave, and sat down to meditate. But he found no peace. The dripping of water from the ceiling annoyed him. The chirping of a cricket felt like an intrusion. The wind whistling through the entrance grated on his nerves. But most of all, the relentless chatter of his own mind filled the cave with more noise than any city. Frustrated, he returned to the master. The cave was not quiet at all, he complained. The master smiled and said, "Follow me." He led the man not to the mountains, but down into the heart of the busiest city, to a marketplace teeming with people. Merchants were shouting, children were crying, hammers were banging, and the air was thick with 1,000 sounds. And there, sitting on a simple mat in the middle of it all, was another monk, his eyes gently closed, a faint, serene smile on his lips. He was an image of perfect, unshakable tranquility. The man was astonished. "How can he be so peaceful here?" he whispered. The master replied, "Because he is not seeking a quiet place. He has become the quiet place. This is the secret. Silence is not emptiness. It is a spacious awareness. It is the ability to allow the sounds of the world and the thoughts of the mind to arise, exist, and pass away without being swept up by them. It is the deep, calm center of the hurricane. The world can be raging, the monkey mind can be swinging, but a part of you remains untouched, still, and observant. And why is this inner silence so fundamentally important? It is not simply for relaxation, though that is a welcome benefit. This inner silence is the necessary foundation for all true understanding. Think of your mind as a deep lake. When it is agitated by the winds of daily life, the water is churned up, and the mud from the bottom makes everything cloudy and opaque. You cannot see what lies within, but when you allow the winds to die down, when you cultivate stillness, the mud begins to settle, the water becomes clear, and for the first time, you can see all the way to the bottom. You can see the rocks and the plants and the creatures that live there. This is the power of inner silence. It allows the turbulence of the mind to settle so that you may clearly see its contents, your habits, your patterns, your fears, your deepest truths without distortion. It is in this clear, silent water of the mind that wisdom can finally be reflected. So we begin here, not by fighting the noise, not by cursing the chaos, but by simply acknowledging it, inside and out. We see the waves of the world for what they are. We feel the frantic energy of the monkey mind without judging it, and we hold the intention, the gentle aspiration, to find that island of stillness within. But as we sit in this newfound, tentative quiet, as the external and internal noise begins to subside even for a moment, we may become aware of something else. It is not a sound, but a feeling, a subtle, persistent weight, a background hum of dissatisfaction that was always there, just drowned out by the chaos. What is this feeling? What is this fundamental, unseen burden that we all seem to carry, no matter our circumstances? To understand this, we must turn to the first great insight of the Buddha, a diagnosis of the human condition that is as true today as it was 2,500 years ago. In the quiet space we have begun to cultivate, away from the relentless noise of the world, we feel it, a persistent, underlying sense of incompleteness, a weight. The Buddha, in his role as the great physician of the mind, gave this condition a name. The name is dukkha. This Pali word is most often translated into English as suffering, but that single word is far too narrow, too laden with images of tragedy and despair. To truly understand dukkha is to understand the very texture of our existence. It is not a pessimistic declaration that life is misery. It is a precise, compassionate, and courageous diagnosis. It is the first of the Four Noble Truths, the foundational insight upon which the entire path to freedom is built. To turn away from this truth is to remain a patient who refuses to hear the diagnosis. To face it, however, is to take the first, most crucial step toward healing. To grasp the depth of this diagnosis, we must understand that dukkha manifests in three distinct, though interwoven, forms. The first is the one we all recognize, the one that fits our conventional understanding of suffering. This is dukkha, the suffering of pain. It is the sharp, undeniable pain of a headache, the agony of a broken bone, the grief that hollows you out when you lose someone you love. It is the sting of betrayal, the humiliation of failure, the anxiety of sickness. This form of dukkha is an unavoidable part of having a body and a heart in a world of sickness, old age, and death. No amount of positive thinking can wish it away. It is a fundamental reality of life, and the Buddhist path does not pretend otherwise. It acknowledges this pain, honors it, and seeks not to magically erase it, but to change our relationship to it. But if dukkha were only this obvious pain, it would be an incomplete diagnosis. Much of life is not spent in acute crisis, but in moments of pleasure and happiness. And this is where the second form, a more subtle and pervasive form, arises. This is viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the anxiety that lurks just beneath the surface of our happiest moments. Think of a perfect vacation. The sun is warm, the company is good, the scenery is beautiful. And yet, a small voice in the back of the mind whispers, "This will end soon." That faint shadow, that reluctance to let the moment pass, is viparinama dukkha. It is the pain we feel when a pleasant experience fades. It is the frustration of our bodies aging, of our youth slipping away. It's the sadness of a beautiful flower wilting, of a cherished friendship drifting apart. This form of suffering arises not from the experience itself, but from our desperate attempt to cling to it, to make something permanent which is, by its very nature, impermanent. We are trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The tighter we squeeze, the faster it escapes. Our resistance to the universal law of change is a primary source of our own distress. This leads us to the third and most profound level of this diagnosis. This is sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence itself. This is the unseen weight. This is the background hum of dissatisfaction that persists even when there is no obvious pain and no immediate pleasure being lost. It is a deep existential friction. It is the stress that comes from the simple fact that our lives, our bodies, our minds, and our very sense of self are built upon a foundation of constantly changing, unreliable conditions. It is the effort required to simply maintain our lives. The need to constantly feed the body, protect it from harm, manage our finances, maintain our homes, navigate complex social relationships. There is a baseline level of tension in just holding it all together. It is the feeling of being a juggler with too many balls in the air, knowing that at any moment, one might drop. This is the dukkha that drives our consumer culture, the vague feeling that if we just had that one more thing, this background hum would finally cease. But it never does. This is the subtle suffering that can haunt a person who has achieved every external marker of success, wealth, fame, power, and yet lies awake at night with the hollow feeling of, is this all there is? It is the inherent unsatisfactoriness of seeking lasting security in a world where nothing is lasting. Hearing this diagnosis, the mind might rebel. It might sound bleak, negative, pessimistic. But this is where we must shift our perspective, from that of a critic to that of a patient seeking a cure. And the first dose of medicine the great physician offers is the truth of universality. You are not alone in this. Dukkha is not your personal failure. It is not a sign that you are uniquely flawed. It is the shared, common ground of all conscious beings. The richest king and the poorest beggar both experience the pain of loss, the anxiety of change, and the friction of conditioned existence. This shared vulnerability is not a cause for despair, but the very basis for compassion. There is no story that captures this truth more beautifully than that of Kisa Gotami. She was a young woman whose infant son had died, and she was driven mad by her grief. Clutching the small, lifeless body, she went from house to house, desperately seeking medicine that could bring her child back to life. Some pitied her, others scorned her, but no one could help. Finally, someone directed her to the Buddha. She laid her son at his feet and pleaded for help. The Buddha looked at her with infinite compassion and did not offer false comfort. He said to her, "There is only one thing that can help. Go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed, but it must come from a house where no one and no child, no parent, no spouse, no Savanthas ever died." Filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gotami began her quest. At the first house, she asked for the seed, and the family was happy to give it to her. But when she asked the vital question, "Has anyone in this house ever known death?" the woman replied, "Oh, do not remind me of my deepest sorrow. My husband died only last year." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. One family had lost a daughter, another had lost a father, another an uncle. House after house, door after door, the same story of loss and grief unfolded. As the sun began to set, the truth began to dawn in her heart. She had not found the magical seed, but she had found something far more profound, a mirror to her own sorrow in every home she visited. She realized that her pain was not uniquely hers. It was the pain of being human. Her frantic, personal grief began to soften, transforming into a vast, empathetic compassion for all beings who must endure the pain of loss. She returned to the Buddha, not for the medicine, but with the understanding that is the medicine itself. This is the power and the courage of the first noble truth. It is not a doctrine of pessimism, it is a call to radical honesty. Our culture encourages us to do the opposite of what Kisa Gotami did. It tells us to numb our pain, to distract ourselves from our anxiety, to present a facade of constant happiness and success. We are told to ignore the diagnosis, to pretend the illness isn't there. The Buddhist path invites us to be braver than that. It invites us to turn on the light in the room and look, without flinching, at the reality of our condition. This act of seeing is not depressing. It is the ultimate act of empowerment. To name the illness is to begin to rob it of its power. The vague, unseen weight is brought into the light, where it can be examined and understood. It means the problem is not a random, meaningless affliction, but a definable condition. And if a condition is definable, it has causes. And if it has causes, a path to its cessation can be found. This is the profound hope embedded within the first noble truth. The diagnosis is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of the healing journey. By courageously acknowledging the reality of dukkha in all its forms, we have taken the first, essential step. We have stopped running, we have stopped pretending. We are now standing on solid ground, ready to ask the next, most logical question a patient can ask. Now that the great physician has given us this clear, unflinching diagnosis, we must inquire further. Doctor, where does this illness come from? What is its cause? To simply know we are unwell is not enough. To find a cure, we must first understand the origin of the disease. Having stood firm and looked directly at our shared diagnosis of dukkha, the unseen weight of existence, we are no longer in the dark. A problem identified is a problem that can be solved. The intelligent patient, having heard the diagnosis, now turns to the great physician with the most vital question. Doctor, what is the cause? Where does this fever of the soul, this deep and persistent dissatisfaction, come from? The answer to this question forms the second noble truth, known in Pali as samudaya, the truth of the origin of suffering. The Buddha's insight here is both startlingly simple and profoundly deep. He states that the root cause of our dukkha is a force within us called tanha. This word, tanha, is often translated as craving or desire, but its true meaning is closer to thirst. It is not a gentle wanting, it is a deep, primal, burning thirst. It is the frantic impulse of a person lost in the desert who will drink sand or salt water, knowing it will not quench their thirst, but driven by a force they cannot control. This thirst is the engine of our discontent, the restless energy that keeps the monkey mind swinging from branch to branch. It is the force that convinces us that peace and happiness are always somewhere else, in some future moment, tied to some external object or condition. To understand this thirst is to understand the very mechanism of our own inner prison. The Buddha identified 3 distinct channels through which this thirst flows, 3 ways it manifests in our lives. The first is the most obvious, kama, tanha, the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the craving for things that feel good to our 5 senses and our mind. It is the desire for delicious food, for beautiful music, for captivating films, for luxurious textures, for sexual gratification, for interesting ideas. Our modern world is an engine built to fuel this specific thirst. The endless scroll on social media is designed to feed our eyes with novel images. Streaming services offer a limitless buffet of entertainment to occupy our minds. The food industry constantly invents new flavors to excite our palates. This is the thirst that keeps us consuming, seeking the next hit of pleasure, the next dose of dopamine. The problem is not the pleasure itself, but the thirst. The pleasure is always fleeting, and once it fades, the thirst returns, often stronger than before, demanding a new and better experience. We are like a person drinking salt water. The very act of drinking only intensifies the burning thirst. The second form of this thirst is more subtle, and it strikes at the very heart of our identity. This is bhavatanha, the thirst for existence, for becoming. This is not just the desire for a pleasant experience. It is the deep, desperate craving to be someone, to have a solid, lasting, and important self. It is the thirst for fame, for status, for power, for reputation. It is the engine behind our ambition, the desire to climb the ladder, to build a legacy, to leave a mark on the world. In the digital age, this manifests as the obsession with personal branding, the curating of our online lives to project an image of success and happiness. Bhavatanha is the architect of our ego. It tells us, I must become more, I must be better, I must be recognized. It is also the deep, instinctual fear of annihilation, the terror of not existing, of being forgotten. This thirst compels us to constantly prop up and defend our sense of self, an exhausting and ultimately futile task, for we are trying to build a permanent fortress on the shifting sands of an ever-changing reality. The third form reveals the complexity of this inner force. It is vibhava tanha, the thirst for non-existence or annihilation. This is the other side of the coin of craving. It is aversion. It is the burning desire to get rid of something unpleasant. When you feel physical pain, the intense desire for the pain to stop is vibhava tanha. When you are stuck in traffic, the anger and frustration, the desire for the situation to be over, is vibhava tanha. It is the hatred we feel for a person who has wronged us, the deep wish that they would simply disappear from our lives. It is the force behind our avoidance, our procrastination, our denial of uncomfortable truths. At its most extreme, when the pain of existence becomes unbearable, it can even manifest as the desire for suicide, the ultimate thirst for the annihilation of suffering. This third thirst shows us that tanha is not just about pulling pleasant things toward us, but also about violently pushing unpleasant things away. It is the fundamental reactivity of an untrained mind, constantly grasping for pleasure and recoiling from pain. These three thirsts work together to create the self-perpetuating cycle of dukkha. It begins with a contact. Our eyes see something, our ears hear something. This contact creates a feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. If the feeling is pleasant, kama tanha arises, the thirst to hold on to it. If the feeling is unpleasant, vibhava tanha arises, the thirst to destroy it. This thirst then intensifies into what is called upadana, which means clinging or attachment. We are no longer just wanting something. Our sense of well-being has now become dependent on it. The thirst has become a need, and from this clinging, all our suffering is born. We suffer because we don't get what we crave. We suffer because we get what we crave, and then we live in fear of losing it. And we suffer because even when we get it, it never quite satisfies the deep thirst that drove us in the first place, leaving us feeling hollow and wanting more. There is a powerful parable that illustrates this self-imprisonment perfectly. In parts of Asia, a traditional method for trapping a monkey involves a coconut. The trapper cuts a hole in the coconut just large enough for a monkey's open hand to slide through. They place some rice or a sweet inside and chain the coconut to a tree. Sooner or later, a monkey comes along, smells the treat, and slips its hand inside. It grasps the rice, making a fist. But now, with its hand clenched, the fist is too large to pass back through the opening. The monkey pulls and screeches, growing more and more frantic, but it cannot get its hand out. The trappers can then simply walk up and capture it. The profound and tragic irony is that the monkey is not truly being held by the trap. There are no bars, no cage. It is being held by its own clenched fist. Its freedom is only an open palm away. All it has to do is let go of the rice, and it can pull its hand out and escape. But its tanha, its craving, is so powerful that it will sacrifice its very freedom for a fistful of rice. We are that monkey. The world is the coconut, and our cravings are the fistful of rice. We cling to our desires, our identities, our opinions, our pleasures, and our resentments. And in doing so, we trap ourselves. We believe we are being held prisoner by our circumstances, our jobs, our relationships, or our past. But the second noble truth reveals that the bars of our cage are forged from our own craving. The jailer and the prisoner are one and the same. Freedom is simply a matter of learning how to gently and wisely open our hand. Now, this can sound like a call to extinguish all joy, all passion, all ambition. It can be misinterpreted as a path to becoming a lifeless, passionless automaton. This is a critical misunderstanding. The Buddhist path makes a vital distinction between wholesome desire, known as chanda, and unwholesome thirst, tanha. Chanda is the desire to create, to learn, to grow, to help others. Wanting to be a better parent is chanda. Aspiring to master a musical instrument is chanda. Working hard to build a better community is chanda. These are wholesome aspirations that give life meaning and direction. The difference lies not in the desire itself, but in the clinging. With chanda, you find joy in the process. You can strive for a goal, but your happiness is not entirely dependent on the outcome. You can learn and grow from failure. With tanha, the desire is feverish. The ego is involved. Your self-worth becomes chained to the result. I must get this promotion, or I am a failure. I must be in a relationship, or I am worthless. When a desire becomes a non-negotiable demand, it has crossed the line from chanda to tanha, and it will inevitably lead to dukkha. And so, the investigation is complete. We have followed the tracks from the scene of the crime, your own dissatisfaction, and we have found the culprit. It is not the world, it is not other people. It is this deep, burning thirst within us. To know the cause of an illness is a moment of immense hope. It means the illness is not some random, incurable curse. It is a process, a chain of cause and effect. And any chain, once it is understood, can be broken. If this burning thirst is the direct cause of our suffering, then it follows, with inescapable logic, that the cessation of this thirst must be the cessation of our suffering. Is such a thing even possible for a human being, so deeply conditioned by craving? Can we truly be free from this fire? The great physician's third and most hopeful truth answers this question with a clear and resounding yes. We have journeyed into the heart of our own disquiet. We have looked unflinchingly at the diagnosis of dukkha, the pervasive sense of dissatisfaction that colors our lives, and we have tracked its source to the burning, insatiable thirst of tanha, the craving that holds us captive like the monkey with its fist trapped in the coconut. To remain here, in the analysis of the illness and its cause, would be to leave the story half told. It would be an act of intellectual curiosity, but not one of healing. The true power, the liberating genius of the Buddha's insight, does not lie solely in his diagnosis, but in his prognosis. It is here, at this crucial turning point, that the path pivots from the darkness of the problem to the brilliant light of the solution. This pivot is the third noble truth, known as nirodha. The word means cessation, ending, or extinguishing. What is it that ceases? It is dukkha. And how does it cease? By the complete fading away and cessation of that very same tanha, the thirst that gives rise to it. This is a statement of the most profound hope. It is a declaration that our inner prison has a door, and that this door is not locked. It is a promise that a state of being free from the fever of craving is not a fantasy, but an attainable reality for any human being willing to walk the path. Let us be very clear about what this cessation means. It is not annihilation. It is not a retreat into a blank, emotionless void. It is the extinguishing of a fire. Imagine the three fires that fuel all our suffering: the fire of greed and grasping, the fire of hatred and aversion, and the fire of ignorance and delusion. Tanha is the fuel for these fires. When we learn to stop supplying the fuel, the fires naturally die down. And what is left when the smoke clears and the flames are gone? Not a cold, empty hearth, but a radiant, peaceful warmth. What is left is the mind in its natural, unobscured state, clear, calm, luminous, and boundless. Nirodha is the discovery of an unshakable peace that does not depend on external conditions. It is a freedom so profound that the inevitable ups and downs of life, the praise and blame, the gain and loss, the pleasure and pain can no longer destabilize you. You are no longer a ship tossed about on the waves of circumstance, but the deep, quiet ocean beneath, undisturbed by the turmoil on the surface. This is not a heaven to be reached after death. It is a psychological state, a quality of being that can be realized right here, right now, in this very life. To hear this promise is to feel a surge of hope, but it is immediately followed by the most practical of questions: how? If the cessation of craving is the cure, what is the medicine? What is the method? This question brings us to the fourth and final noble truth, known as magga, which simply means the path. The Buddha did not just point to a destination, he provided a detailed, step-by-step map to get there. This map is perhaps one of the most famous and practical teachings in all of Buddhism: the Noble Eightfold Path. This is not a path of 8 sequential steps where you must perfect one before moving on to the next. It is far more organic, more holistic than that. Imagine a strong rope or a cable. It is not a single strand, but is woven from 8 individual strands that run alongside each other, each one supporting and strengthening the whole. To work on any one strand is to strengthen the entire rope. So it is with the Noble Eightfold Path. Its 8 factors are to be cultivated simultaneously: as they are all interconnected aspects of a complete and integrated way of life. For the sake of understanding, however, this comprehensive path can be divided into three essential sections, or trainings. The first is the training in wisdom, or panya in Pali. This is the guiding intelligence of the path, the compass that ensures we are heading in the right direction. It is about seeing the world and ourselves clearly and accurately, free from the distortions of our hopes and fears. This section on wisdom is comprised of two path factors. First, right view, and second, right intention. It is the foundation upon which everything else is built. The second is the training in ethical conduct, or sila. This is the practical application of wisdom in our daily lives. It governs how we engage with the world, how we behave in a way that is harmless, compassionate, and beneficial to ourselves and others. If wisdom is the seeing, then ethical conduct is the skillful acting. It recognizes that our inner peace is inextricably linked to our outer actions. It is difficult to calm the mind if our speech and actions are causing harm and creating conflict. This section is comprised of three path factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. The third and final training is in mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the active cultivation of the mind itself. It is the inner workout that develops the strength, stability, and clarity needed to walk the path effectively. It is through this training that we develop the focus and insight required to uproot the deep habits of craving and ignorance. This section is comprised of the final three path factors: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Wisdom, ethical conduct, mental discipline, seeing, acting, cultivating. These three trainings work in a beautiful synergy. Our ethical conduct provides a stable and peaceful foundation for our mind to be trained. The training of our mind through mental discipline allows it to become calm and clear enough to develop true wisdom. And that wisdom, in turn, informs our conduct, making it even more compassionate and skillful. And so the spiral turns upward toward greater freedom and peace. Before we take our first step onto this path, it is essential to understand the spirit in which it is meant to be walked. This is not a path of grim, joyless struggle. It is not about forcing or straining. The Buddha illuminated this through a beautiful story about one of his monks, a man named Sona. Sona had been a musician before becoming a monk, and he was practicing with extreme, almost violent effort. He meditated with clenched teeth and a tense body, trying to force enlightenment to happen. He was getting nowhere but exhausted and was on the verge of giving up entirely. The Buddha, knowing Sona's mind, went to him and asked, "Sona, before you became a monk, you were skilled at playing the lute, were you not?" Sona replied that he was. The Buddha then asked, "Tell me, Sona, if the strings of your lute were tuned too tightly, would it produce a beautiful sound?" "No, venerable sir," Sona said. "The strings would likely snap. And if the strings were too loose, what then?" "Then, sir, it would produce a dull, muffled sound, not pleasant at all." The Buddha then asked the final question, "But what if the strings were tuned just right, not too tight and not too loose, but perfectly balanced?" Sona's face lit up. "Then, sir, it would produce a beautiful, harmonious and melodious sound." The Buddha smiled gently. "So it is, Sona, with the spiritual path. If you apply too much effort, your mind becomes tense and agitated, and you will burn out. If your effort is too slack, you will fall into laziness and complacency, and no progress will be made. You must walk the middle way. Tune the instrument of your mind and body with the same skill you once tuned your lute, with balance, sensitivity, and gentle persistence. This is the spirit of the Noble Eightfold Path. It is the quintessential middle way, steering clear of the two extremes the Buddha himself had explored and rejected, the extreme of sensual indulgence, which he knew only led to more craving, and the extreme of harsh, self-mortifying asceticism, which he knew only weakened the body and mind without purifying it. It is a path of sanity, of balance, of compassionate and intelligent living. And so, we now stand at the trailhead. The journey ahead is no longer a blind, stumbling through the forest of our confusion. We have a diagnosis. We understand the cause. We have the promise of a cure, and now we hold in our hands a clear, practical and balanced map. We have the Noble Eightfold Path. Where does such a profound journey begin? It begins, as all journeys of understanding must, with the way we see. It begins with the compass that will guide every other step we take. We will now take our first step onto this path by exploring its very foundation, the division of wisdom, and its first, most crucial component, the one that shapes everything else that is to come, right view. We stand at the beginning of the trail. The Noble Eightfold Path unfolded before us like a map. And like any wise traveler, we know that the first and most essential tool for any journey is a reliable compass. Without it, all our energy, all our effort, could lead us deeper into the wilderness rather than toward our destination. In the landscape of the mind, that compass is the first factor of the path, samadititi, or right view. This is the bedrock of wisdom, the foundation upon which all other practices are built. To have right view does not mean to adopt a rigid set of beliefs or to win a philosophical argument. It means to see things, not as we wish they were, not as we fear they might be, but as they truly are. It is the difficult, courageous, and ultimately liberating act of cleaning the lens of our perception so that reality can shine through without distortion. For most of our lives, we look at the world through a lens clouded by what the Buddha called delusion or ignorance. This isn't a lack of intelligence. It is a fundamental misperception of the nature of existence. We mistakenly believe that which is fleeting is permanent, that which is inherently unsatisfying can bring us lasting happiness, and that there is a solid, separate, unchanging self at the center of our experience. These misperceptions are the very root of the thirst, the tanha, that causes all our dukkha. Right view is the practice of methodically and patiently correcting this distorted vision. It is about aligning our perspective with reality. The core of this clear seeing involves the deep contemplation and direct recognition of what are known as the three marks of existence. The first of these is anicca, or impermanence. This is the most accessible of the three, yet its implications are profound. Anicca is the universal law that all things, without exception, are in a constant state of flux. Nothing is static. Our bodies are changing with every breath, our cells dying and being replaced. Our thoughts and emotions are a ceaseless, flowing river. Our moment of joy arises, it crests, and it passes away, followed by a moment of boredom, which in turn gives way to something else. The seasons turn, mountains erode, stars are born and die. The entire universe is a dynamic, pulsating dance of arising and ceasing. Our suffering does not come from this truth. The rain is not the cause of suffering. Trying to stay dry in a storm without an umbrella is. Likewise, impermanence is not the source of our dukkha. Our resistance to it is. We suffer because we try to build permanent castles on the shifting sands of time. We cling to our youth, our health, our relationships, our moments of happiness, as if we could freeze them in place. We crave security in a world that is fundamentally insecure. This constant struggle against the natural flow of life is exhausting and doomed to fail. Right view is the wisdom to see this, and to begin, gently, to loosen our grip. When we truly understand impermanence, it doesn't lead to nihilism, but to a newfound appreciation for life. It infuses every moment with a precious quality precisely because it will not last. It also offers immense hope. Because of anicca, pain is not permanent. Grief is not permanent. Despair is not permanent. The clouds will always pass. This is the consolation prize of a universe in flux. The second mark of existence is dukkha, which we have already explored as the first noble truth. Here, in the context of right view, it means seeing clearly the inherently unsatisfactory nature of all conditioned things when we rely on them for ultimate, lasting happiness. It is the clear-eyed recognition that the strategy of chasing pleasure and avoiding pain is a flawed game. It's like being a hamster on a wheel. No matter how fast we run, we never arrive at a final destination of contentment. Right view is seeing the wheel for what it is. It's the realization that the salt water of sense pleasures can never quench our deep spiritual thirst. This is not a cynical view, it is a pragmatic one. It allows us to stop investing our entire life's energy in a strategy that is guaranteed to fail. and to start looking for a more reliable source of peace. This leads us to the third and most profound mark of existence, the cornerstone of Buddhist wisdom, anatta, or not, self. This is perhaps the most misunderstood of all Buddhist teachings. It does not mean that you do not exist. You are here, reading these words, thinking these thoughts. Anatta means that upon close examination, we cannot find anything within our experience that corresponds to our idea of a permanent, independent, unchanging self or soul. The self we take for granted, the little me that seems to be the CEO in the headquarters of our mind, is a mental construction, a useful convention for navigating the world, but not an ultimate reality. The Buddha invites us to investigate this for ourselves. He breaks down our entire experience into 5 components, or aggregates. First, there is the physical body. Is this body me? It is constantly changing, aging, getting sick. We cannot command it to stay young or healthy. It is composed of non-body elements like the food we ate and the air we breathe. It is not under our ultimate control, so how can it be our true self? Second, there are our feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Are these me? They are as fleeting as the weather, arising and passing away in response to conditions. To identify with our feelings would be to have a different self every few minutes. Third, there are our perceptions, the mental labels we put on things: blue, car, good, bad. These are also dependent on conditions and are notoriously unreliable. Fourth, there are our mental formations, our thoughts, habits, opinions, and intentions. This is the closest we get to what we think of as our personality. But are these me? Our thoughts are a wild torrent, often appearing unbidden. Our opinions change over time. Our habits can be retrained. This too is an ever-changing process, not a static entity. Fifth, there is consciousness itself, the basic awareness that cognizes all the other components. But this consciousness is also not a fixed thing. It depends on an object to be aware of. Visual consciousness depends on a sight. Auditory consciousness depends on a sound. It flickers in and out of existence with every moment of experience. So, where in all this is the permanent, solid me? The teaching of anatta suggests that we are not a noun, but a verb. We are not a thing, but a process. We are like a river, a dynamic, flowing, interconnected process of these 5 aggregates. To give it a single name, the self, is a convenient shorthand, but to believe that name refers to a real, separate entity is the source of our deepest delusion. There is a beautiful Zen story that illuminates the liberating power of this view. A man is enjoying a quiet moment, rowing his boat on a misty lake. Suddenly, another boat comes out of the fog and rams into his with a loud thud. The man is filled with instant rage. "You idiot!" He prepares to scream. "Watch where you're going!" He turns to shout at the person in the other boat, but as he does, he sees that the boat is empty. It had simply come untied from its moorings and was drifting with the current. In that instant, his anger completely evaporates. There is no one to be angry at. The empty boat is the teaching of anatta. Most of our suffering in life, our anger, our resentment, our pride, our fear is caused by our reaction to the imagined pilot in the other boat. We take things personally. We create a story of a solid me who has been wronged by a solid you. When we truly see through the illusion of this separate self, our capacity for anger, hatred, and self-pity diminishes radically. There is less to defend, less to promote, less to be offended by. We are no longer the target, we are simply part of the flow. Right view, then, is the simultaneous seeing of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. It is the understanding that we live in a world of selfless, interconnected, and impermanent processes. This is not a belief system to be adopted on faith. It is a hypothesis to be tested through mindful observation of our own experience. To cultivate right view is to repeatedly ask ourselves, is this feeling permanent? Is this thought truly me? Is relying on this external thing for my happiness a reliable strategy? It is a gradual process of dehypnotizing ourselves from a lifetime of cultural conditioning. When one begins to truly see the world through this new, clearer lens, when the compass of right view begins to point true north toward reality, it inevitably changes the entire direction of one's inner life. A new way of seeing naturally gives rise to a new way of thinking. What we hold as true shapes what we value and what we aspire to. This leads us directly to the second beautiful strand in the braid of wisdom, the cultivation of right intention. With the compass of right view in our hands, we are, for the first time, oriented. We can see the landscape of our experience with a newfound clarity, recognizing the shifting sands of impermanence, the inherent unreliability of conditioned things, and the selfless, flowing nature of our own being. But a compass only tells you where north is. It does not, by itself, determine your destination or the direction of your first step. Seeing clearly is the foundation, but it must be followed by a conscious choice. This is the role of the second factor of the path, the second strand in the braid of wisdom. Sama sankappa, or right intention. If right view is about how we see, right intention is about how we choose to respond to what we see. It is the rudder of the ship, allowing us to steer our lives deliberately toward the shores of liberation, rather than drifting aimlessly on the currents of habit and reaction. The Buddha taught that the mind is like a garden. It is a fertile plot of ground, and something will always be growing there. If we do not tend to it consciously, it will naturally be overtaken by weeds. The weeds are the mind's default, untrained tendencies. The weeds of greed, of anger, of jealousy, of fear, of resentment. They require no effort to grow. They simply thrive on neglect. To practice right intention is to become a conscious gardener of the mind. It is the deliberate, moment-to-moment choice to pull the weeds of unwholesome thoughts and to plant, water, and nurture the seeds of wholesome states. It is the recognition that our thoughts are not random, uncontrollable events. They are habits, and like any habit, they can be changed with patience and practice. Right intention is the commitment to undertaking this inner cultivation, to taking responsibility for the climate of our own heart. The Buddha simplified this practice by focusing on three essential types of right intention. These three serve as the antidote to the three forms of wrong intention that keep us trapped in suffering. The first of these is the intention of renunciation, or nekkhamma. For the Western ear, the word renunciation can sound severe, conjuring images of self-denial and a grim rejection of all of life's pleasures. But its true meaning is far more gentle and liberating. It simply means letting go. It is the intentional cultivation of non-attachment. It is the direct antidote to the thirst, the tanha, that we identified as the cause of our suffering. It is the conscious decision to open the monkey's fist and let go of the rice. What are we renouncing? We are renouncing our compulsive clinging to sense pleasures. We are letting go of the need for the next hit of entertainment, the next purchase, the next fleeting distraction. We are renouncing our addiction to being right, our need to win every argument and defend our ego at all costs. We are letting go of our attachment to outcomes, our rigid insistence that life must unfold according to our plans. It is a turning away from the complex and exhausting pursuit of more, and a turning toward the peace and contentment of simplicity. Every time you feel the pull of a craving to check your phone, to indulge in angry fantasies, to buy something you don't need, and you consciously choose to just let that impulse be without acting on it, you are practicing the intention of renunciation. It is a quiet, internal declaration of freedom from the tyranny of your own desires. It is not about punishing yourself, it is about unburdening yourself. The second form of right intention is the intention of goodwill, or avyapada. This is the direct antidote to the poison of ill will, anger, resentment, and hatred. It is the active cultivation of a warm, open-hearted friendliness toward all living beings, without exception. This begins with ourselves. So often, we are our own harshest critic, speaking to ourselves with a level of cruelty we would never direct at another person. The intention of goodwill starts by turning that kindness inward, wishing for our own peace and happiness. From there, we extend it outward, to our loved ones, our friends, our colleagues, to neutral people we pass on the street, and, most challengingly, to those we find difficult or who have harmed us. To be clear, this is not an intention to force yourself to like everyone or to approve of harmful actions. It is the simple, powerful recognition that every being, just like us, wants to be happy and wishes to avoid suffering. The intention of goodwill is the silent wish. May you be free from harm. May you find peace. Holding on to anger, as the saying goes, is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. The intention of goodwill is the conscious act of putting down that hot coal. It is a shield that protects our own mind from the corrosive effects of hatred. Every time you catch a surge of anger or irritation, and, instead of feeding it, you silently wish that person well, you are transforming your own inner world from a battlefield into a sanctuary. The third form of right intention is the intention of harmlessness, or avihisa. This is the foundation of compassion and is the antidote to cruelty and violence. It is closely related to goodwill, but it carries a more active quality of non-harming. It is the deep resolve to act, speak, and even think in ways that do not cause suffering to oneself or others. This practice begins in the most subtle realm, the mind. Long before a harmful word is spoken or a violent act is committed, a harmful thought first takes root in the garden of the mind. The intention of harmlessness is about developing the mindfulness to catch these seeds of cruelty before they sprout. This extends far beyond just physical violence. It includes the intention to refrain from the subtle ways we cause harm every day. It is the intention not to engage in gossip that damages another's reputation. It is the intention to avoid the sharp, sarcastic comment designed to make someone feel small. It is the intention to notice and release the secret flicker of pleasure we might feel at another's misfortune. It is a profound commitment to moving through the world with a gentle footprint, to becoming a source of safety and peace for those around us. It is the understanding that our own liberation is inextricably bound up with the well-being of all. There is a timeless story, often attributed to the Cherokee people, that perfectly captures the essence of right intention. An elder is teaching his grandson about life. He says, "A fight is going on inside me. It is a terrible fight between two wolves. One wolf is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, and ego. The other wolf is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, and truth." The grandson thinks about this for a minute and then asks his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old man replies simply, "The one you feed." This is the very heart of right intention. Every moment of our lives, we are presented with a choice. Which wolf will we feed? When someone cuts us off in traffic, will we feed the wolf of anger with a stream of internal curses? Or will we feed the wolf of peace with an intention of goodwill, wishing them to be safe on their journey? When we see the success of a friend, will we feed the wolf of envy? Or will we feed the wolf of joy by celebrating their happiness? The path is not about pretending the dark wolf doesn't exist. It is there. It is a part of our conditioned mind. The practice is to consciously and repeatedly withdraw our attention and energy from it, and instead to nourish and strengthen the wolf of light. The three right intentions of renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness are the food for the good wolf. This internal commitment, this quiet, consistent shift in the heart's deepest aspirations cannot remain a secret within us for long. What we cultivate in the hidden garden of the mind will inevitably begin to produce blossoms that are visible to the world. The thoughts we choose to water are the very same thoughts that will eventually find their way to our lips. A mind that is oriented toward goodwill and harmlessness will naturally seek to express itself in a way that reflects that inner landscape. Thus, the path flows organically from the purity of our intention to the purity of our communication. We move from the inner world of thought to the outer world of speech. We move from right intention to the next factor on the path, right speech. As we continue to tend the inner garden of the mind, cultivating intentions of letting go, of goodwill, and of harmlessness, a remarkable thing begins to happen. The inner world cannot be contained. Like the fragrance of a flower, the quality of our mind inevitably emanates outward, and its first and most frequent expression is through our speech. Our words are thoughts made audible. They are the bridge between our private consciousness and the shared world of others, and this bridge is a place of immense power. With our words, we can build castles of trust, gardens of encouragement, and sanctuaries of healing. Or, with the very same breath, we can unleash armies of discord, plant seeds of doubt, and inflict wounds that are invisible but can fester for a lifetime. Recognizing this profound power, the Buddha designated the next element of the path as samavacha, or right speech. This is the first step in the training of ethical conduct, the art of translating our inner wisdom into our interactions with the world. Right speech is not about mastering rhetoric or becoming a charming conversationalist. It is a practice of purification, of aligning our communication with our deepest intention to reduce suffering. To make this practical, the teaching is traditionally framed around 4 specific types of speech to abstain from. These 4 guidelines act as a clear and steady guardrail, keeping us on the path of compassionate communication. The first of these is to abstain from false speech. At its most basic level, this means not telling lies. It is a commitment to truthfulness. But the practice goes much deeper than avoiding major falsehoods. It invites us to become aware of the subtle dishonesties we engage in every day. The small exaggeration to make a story more dramatic, the white lie told to avoid a moment of inconvenience, the flattering comment that we do not mean, the promise made with no real intention of keeping it. It also includes the dishonesty of omission, of presenting a curated, false version of ourselves, especially in the age of social media that hides our struggles and our humanity. Each of these small departures from the truth, seemingly harmless on its own, has a corrosive effect. It erodes the trust others have in us, and more importantly, it erodes our own integrity. When we constantly bend and twist reality with our words, our own mind becomes a confused and unreliable place. To commit to truthful speech is to commit to living in reality. It simplifies our lives immensely, creating a mind that is clear, straightforward, and at peace with itself. The second guideline is to abstain from divisive or slanderous speech. This is the act of using words as a wedge to drive people apart. It is speaking ill of someone behind their back, carrying tales from one person to another, and engaging in gossip that poisons a community's well-being. What is the root of such speech? It is almost always our own insecurity. We may try to diminish others in an attempt to feel bigger ourselves. We may create an us versus them narrative to feel a sense of belonging with a particular group. Whatever the motivation, the result is the same. It creates suspicion, discord, and pain. The practice of right speech is to become a force for harmony. It is the conscious choice to refrain from passing on negative stories and to actively protect others' reputations. The positive practice here is to speak of people's good qualities when they are not present, to be a connector, to use our words to build bridges of understanding rather than walls of resentment. The third form of wrong speech to abandon is harsh speech. These are words spoken from a place of anger. They are the arrows we dip in the poison of our own ill will. This includes shouting, cursing, insults, ridicule, and the particular cruelty of sarcasm designed to sting and belittle. Such words may offer a fleeting, hot-blooded sense of release for the speaker, but they are an act of violence. They can leave deep and lasting scars on the heart of the receiver. Furthermore, they pollute the mind of the speaker, strengthening the habit of anger and reinforcing a view of the world as a hostile place. To practice right speech is to sheathe these verbal weapons. It means cultivating a habit of speaking gently, kindly, and respectfully, even when we are disagreeing or feeling frustrated. This does not mean we become passive or unable to speak difficult truths, but it means we learn to do so skillfully, with the intention to heal or clarify, not to wound. It is the difference between a surgeon's scalpel, which cuts with the intention to heal, and an attacker's knife, which cuts with the intention to harm. The fourth and final guideline is to abstain from idle chatter. This may seem the most innocuous of the four, but its inclusion is a testament to the Buddha's subtle understanding of the mind. Idle chatter is pointless talk, speech that has no purpose other than to fill silence. It is empty gossip about people we don't know, endless speculation about trivial matters, complaining for the sake of complaining, and the kind of conversational static that clutters the airwaves of our lives. Why is this a problem? Because it dissipates our precious mental energy. It creates a habit of distraction and superficiality, making it incredibly difficult to cultivate the silence and focus needed for deeper contemplation. The mind becomes like a leaky bucket, unable to hold any clarity or peace. The practice here is to learn the value of what is called noble silency, silence that is not empty or awkward, but full of presence and awareness. It is to become more mindful and purposeful in our communication. Before speaking, we can get into the habit of asking ourselves a simple set of questions. Is what I am about to say true? Is it kind? Is it beneficial or necessary? Is this the right time to say it? We don't need to become cold or robotic, but this inner filter helps us to use our words with the care and precision they deserve. These 4 abstentions form the don't of right speech. But there is also a do. Right speech is not just about what we stop saying. It is also profoundly about how we start listening. Most of the time, we do not truly listen. We are engaged in what could be called combative listening. We are waiting for the other person to take a breath so we can jump in with our own story, our own opinion, our own solution. We are listening in order to formulate a rebuttal. The practice of right speech invites us to cultivate deep listening, an act of true compassion. This is listening with only one aim: to give the other person the space to be heard, to help them suffer less. It means setting aside our own inner monologue and offering our full, undivided, non-judgmental presence. When we listen in this way, we offer an incredible gift. We allow someone to empty their heart, to untangle their own thoughts, and to feel the profound healing that comes from being truly seen and understood. This, too, is right speech. There is a somber old story that perfectly captures the weight and permanence of our words. A man in a village spread a vicious rumor about a wise elder. A short time later, filled with remorse, he went to the elder's home to apologize. "I have done a terrible thing," he said. "Please tell me how I can make amends." The elder looked at him and said, "There is one thing you can do. Take a pillow full of feathers, go to the center of the village, cut it open, and shake all the feathers out into the wind." The man thought this was a strange request, but he did as he was told. He then returned to the elder and said, "I have done it." The elder then said, "Now, go back and gather up every single feather and put them back in the pillow." The man was dismayed. "But that's impossible," he cried. "The wind has carried them everywhere. I can never get them all back." The elder nodded slowly. "So it is with your words. Once spoken, they are scattered on the winds of time. You can never truly take them back. They travel to places you will never know and do harm you may never see. Our words create worlds. They ripple outward with an energy and a life of their own. As we become more mindful of our speech, we begin to see this in real time. We see how a kind word can lift a person's spirit and how a careless one can ruin their day. This growing mindfulness cannot be contained only to our speech. We begin to recognize that our physical actions carry the same power to create, to heal, to harm. The integrity we are cultivating in our communication must be matched by the integrity of our deeds. This brings us, naturally and seamlessly, to the next factor of the path, the very heart of ethical conduct, right action. As the commitment to harmlessness purifies our speech, we begin to notice that our words and our physical actions are 2 sides of the same coin. A stream of kind words is undermined by a clenched fist. A promise of safety is betrayed by a careless act. The path of ethical conduct, or sila, now calls us to move from the realm of communication to the realm of our physical deeds. It asks us to make our very body an instrument of peace. This is the practice of samma kammanta, or right action. It is the art of ensuring that our physical footprint on this earth is one that is gentle, mindful, and guided by the same wisdom and compassion that we are cultivating in our hearts and minds. It is about living a life of such integrity that we have no cause for remorse, guilt, or fear. Like right speech, the practice of right action is traditionally defined by a set of trainings, a commitment to abstain from certain types of harmful acts. These are not arbitrary rules handed down from on high. to be followed out of blind obedience. They are skillful, pragmatic guidelines born from a deep understanding of cause and effect. They are actions to be avoided precisely because they inevitably lead to suffering, both for others and for ourselves. There are three main components of this training. The first, and most fundamental, is the commitment to abstain from taking life. This is a practice rooted in a deep and profound reverence for existence. It is the recognition that every living being, from the most complex human to the simplest insect, shares a common desire: the desire to live and the desire to avoid death. To intentionally destroy a life, any life, is to act in direct opposition to this fundamental impulse. At its most obvious level, this is a training to refrain from violence, killing, and harming other sentient beings. But in our complex modern world, this principle extends far beyond our direct, personal actions. It invites us to look deeply at the systems our lifestyle supports. When we purchase products from industries that thrive on the suffering of animals in factory farms, or from companies that exploit human labor in dangerous conditions, are we not, in some indirect way, complicit in the causing of harm? The practice of right action calls for a new level of mindfulness in our consumer choices, encouraging us to support systems that honor and protect life rather than those that commodify and destroy it. It also extends to our relationship with the environment. When our patterns of consumption contribute to the destruction of habitats and the extinction of species, we are violating the spirit of this training on a massive scale. To practice abstaining from taking life is to become a protector, a guardian, a force for preservation in a world that so often feels bent on destruction. The second component of right action is to abstain from taking that which is not given. On the surface, this is a simple injunction against stealing. It is a commitment to respect the property, the efforts, and the resources of others. When we take something that does not belong to us, we not only cause distress to another person, we also pollute our own mind with greed and dishonesty, creating an inner state of agitation and fear of being caught. But again, this principle asks us to look more deeply than just overt theft. Are there other ways we take what is not freely offered? We can steal someone's time and energy by being late, or by engaging them in pointless conversations. In the corporate world, one might take credit for a colleague's work. In the digital realm, we might consume pirated software, films, or music without compensating the creators for their labor. The practice of right action encourages a radical honesty and fairness in all our dealings. The positive expression of this practice is the cultivation of generosity, or dana. Instead of asking, "What can I get?" we begin to ask, "What can I give?" We train ourselves to rejoice in giving of our time, our energy, our resources, and our kindness, knowing that the act of giving enriches the giver far more than the receiver. It is the ultimate antidote to the poverty of a mind caught in greed. The third training within right action is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This is a practice of bringing mindfulness, respect, and deep care into one of the most intimate and powerful areas of human experience. At its core, this training is about refraining from any sexual expression that causes harm to oneself or others. This includes actions like adultery that betray trust and shatter relationships, as well as any form of exploitation, coercion, or deceit. The central principle here is one of profound respect for the autonomy, dignity, and heart of another person. It is a commitment to ensure that our sexuality is an expression of mutual care, kindness, and consent, rather than a vehicle for selfish gratification or the wielding of power. In our modern context, this also invites us to be mindful of how we consume media. The objectification of bodies in pornography, for example, can create a distorted and harmful view of sexuality, reducing a sacred human connection to a mere physical act, and fostering unrealistic expectations that can cause suffering within real relationships. The practice of right action here is to be a source of safety, trust, and genuine affection for our partners, to honor our commitments, and to ensure that this powerful energy in our lives is guided by wisdom and compassion rather than by craving and delusion. It is crucial to understand that these three trainings are not meant to be a restrictive moral code that makes us rigid and judgmental. They are the natural, beautiful expression of a mind that is beginning to understand the world through the lens of right view and right intention. When we truly see the interconnectedness of all beings, harming another feels like harming ourselves. When our heart is filled with goodwill, the impulse to steal or to exploit simply withers away. These ethical guidelines are not chains that bind us. They are the very practices that liberate us from the inner torment of guilt, regret, and the fear that comes from a life of heedlessness. They build a solid foundation of self-respect and create a peaceful inner environment where the deeper practices of meditation and concentration can truly flourish. There is a powerful story from the Buddha's life that illustrates the supreme power of right action, in this case, the Buddha's own. It is the story of a terrifying serial killer named Angulimala, which means garland of fingers, for he wore a necklace made from the fingers of his many victims. He was the very embodiment of wrong action, a force of pure violence and terror. The villagers all hid from him, and even the king's soldiers were afraid to pursue him. The Buddha, however, seeing the situation with the clarity of his wisdom, began to walk calmly and mindfully down the road toward Angulimala's forest. Angulimala saw the lone monk and was delighted at such easy prey. He began to run after the Buddha, brandishing his weapons. But a strange thing happened. Although the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, Angulimala, running as fast as he could not catch up to him. Exhausted and bewildered, he finally shouted, "Stop, monk, stop!" The Buddha, continuing to walk, turned his head slightly and replied with a voice of profound calm, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." This simple statement, a perfect action of speech rooted in a state of utter fearlessness, shattered Angulimala's world. He asked the Buddha what he meant. The Buddha explained, "I have stopped forever from killing and causing harm to living beings. I am established in patience and compassion. You are still running on the endless wheel of violence and hatred, creating the causes for your own future suffering." The power of the Buddha's peaceful, compassionate, and fearless presence's perfect right action did what no army could do. It completely disarmed the murderer. Angulimala threw down his weapons, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and asked to become a monk. This story shows us that the power of compassionate action is immense. It can transform hatred into peace. Our own commitment to right action, while perhaps less dramatic, has a similar power to transform our own lives and the lives of those around us. This practice touches every part of our day, from the smallest gesture to the largest choice. And for most of us, the arena where our actions have the greatest impact over the longest period of time is our work. The way we spend our days, the way we earn our living, must also be brought onto the path. It is not enough to be kind and ethical in our private hours if our professional life is a source of harm. Therefore, the path logically extends this principle of harmless action into the realm of our career. This brings us to the fifth factor of the path and the final component of ethical conduct, right livelihood. Having committed ourselves to a path of harmlessness in our speech and our physical actions, we arrive at a domain that, for many of us, consumes the majority of our waking hours, our work. In our modern culture, we are often taught to compartmentalize our lives. We have our work life, a pragmatic and often stressful sphere of activity dedicated to earning money, and then we have our real life, the precious few hours of leisure where we hope to find happiness and meaning. The Buddha's path dissolves this artificial wall. It teaches that our life is a single, integrated whole. The way we spend our 40, 50, or even 60 hours of work per week is not a pause in our spiritual practice. It is our spiritual practice. This is the domain of Samma Ajiva, or right livelihood, the final training in the section of ethical conduct. Our livelihood has a profound and undeniable impact on the state of our mind. If your work requires you to be dishonest, to cut corners, to exploit others, or to sell products that cause harm, you are, for 8 hours a day, watering the seeds of greed, deceit, and heedlessness in the garden of your mind. It then becomes an almost impossible schizophrenic task to go home and attempt to cultivate peace, honesty, and compassion in the few remaining hours of the evening. The stress, the cynicism, and the moral compromises of your work life will inevitably bleed into and poison your inner sanctuary. Right livelihood, therefore, is the recognition that our work must be an expression of our values, not a contradiction to them. It is the commitment to earn a living in a way that does not cause harm and, ideally, contributes to the well-being of the world. To provide clear guidance, the Buddha specifically named 5 types of livelihood that a practitioner should avoid because they are fundamentally rooted in causing harm. While these were defined over 2 millennia ago, their relevance today is staggering. The first is trading in weapons. This is the most direct form of profiting from violence and death. In the modern world, this applies not only to those who manufacture or sell arms, but to the vast network of industries that support global conflict. But we can interpret its spirit more broadly. Does our work contribute to conflict? Does it thrive on an us versus them mentality? One could argue that certain forms of aggressive corporate law, predatory business tactics, or even media that glorifies violence and creates a climate of fear, are all, in a subtle way, a trade in the weapons of conflict and suffering. The second livelihood to avoid is trading in human beings. In the Buddha's time, this meant slavery and forced prostitution. Tragically, these still exist today in the horrific forms of human trafficking. But again, the spirit of this precept challenges us to look deeper. Does our company's business model treat people, employees, or customers as mere commodities to be used for profit? Does it engage in exploitative labor practices in other countries? Does it trap people in cycles of debt through predatory lending? Any livelihood that strips people of their dignity and autonomy for financial gain falls under the shadow of this prohibition. The third is trading in meat. This refers to any profession that involves the raising, slaughtering, and selling of animals for consumption. The underlying principle is the avoidance of profiting from the intentional taking of life. In our age of industrial agriculture, this has taken on a scale and a level of cruelty that would have been unimaginable in the past. To choose a livelihood that does not depend on the immense suffering of factory-farmed animals is a powerful expression of compassionate action. The fourth is trading in intoxicants. This traditionally referred to the selling of alcohol or other substances that cloud the mind and lead to heedlessness. Today, this clearly applies to industries that profit from addiction to alcohol and drugs. But we must make a powerful modern extension here to what is often called the attention economy. Consider a business model that is intentionally designed to create behavioral addiction to a social media platform, a video game, or a gambling app. These products are engineered to hijack the brain's reward system, to diminish mindfulness, and to foster a state of compulsive, distracted, and heedless consumption. This is a new, digital form of trading in intoxicants, and it is a major source of the anxiety and mental fragmentation we see all around us. The fifth and final harmful livelihood is trading in poisons. This is the business of producing or selling any substance intended to kill or cause harm. This clearly includes a company that manufactures known carcinogens and knowingly pollutes the environment, or one that markets a product like tobacco, fully aware of the disease and death it will cause. It is the ultimate expression of profiting from the suffering and ill health of others. To review this list can be daunting. It can feel as though almost every aspect of our modern economy is tainted in some way. But the purpose of this teaching is not to induce guilt or to demand that everyone immediately quit their job. It is to serve as a bright light of inquiry, a tool for self-reflection. It asks us to look honestly at the work we do. Who does it benefit? Who does it harm? Does it align with my deepest values? This leads to a radical redefinition of what constitutes a good job. Our society typically defines a good job by 2 metrics: salary and prestige. Right livelihood proposes a different set of criteria. Does this work cause harm? Does this work offer a service? Does this work allow me to cultivate peace and integrity? Finding a way to answer these questions positively is the true measure of success. Let us imagine a modern parable. A woman named Sarah is a rising star at a major advertising agency. She is brilliant, creative, and highly paid. She has a beautiful apartment in the city, drives a luxury car, and enjoys the respect of her peers. She has achieved everything our culture told her would bring happiness. Yet, She is deeply unhappy. She suffers from a constant low-grade anxiety, and the Sunday evening dread is a weekly torment. Her work consists of using her immense creativity to make people feel inadequate, to create an artificial sense of lack, so they will buy products they don't truly need. She is, in essence, a master at stimulating tanha, the thirst for more. Her livelihood is a direct contradiction to the path of peace she is trying to walk in her private life. After a long period of reflection, she makes a courageous choice. She resigns. She takes an enormous pay cut and accepts a position at a small non-profit organization that focuses on environmental education for children. Her friends think she is crazy, but for the first time in years, she feels a sense of coherence, of integrity. Her work is now difficult, the resources are few, but the stress is meaningful. When she works late, it is not to enrich a shareholder, but to create a program that might inspire a child to love the natural world. Her creativity is now in service of connection, not consumption. Her work is no longer the problem, it has become part of the path. She has not renounced the world. She has found a way to engage with it that nourishes her soul rather than depleting it. This is the promise of right livelihood. Not all of us can or need to make such a dramatic change. The practice can begin right where we are. It is about the intention we bring to our daily tasks. Can we be a more ethical, more compassionate presence in our current workplace? Can we choose to support colleagues rather than compete with them? Can we listen more deeply to customers? Can we refuse to participate in a project that feels unethical? It is about transforming our work from a simple transaction into an act of service, no matter how humble. With this, we complete our exploration of Sila, the beautiful and essential training in ethical conduct. We have worked to align our speech, our physical actions, and now our working life with the principles of compassion, wisdom, and harmlessness. We have built a solid, stable, and honorable foundation for our lives. But a foundation, no matter how well built, is subject to the elements. Life will inevitably test our resolve. Old, deeply ingrained habits of greed, anger, and laziness will re-emerge, seeking to undermine our new structure. Simply having the right view, the right intentions, and the right ethical framework is not enough if we lack the mental energy and discipline to maintain them day after day. How do we develop the inner strength, the resilience, and the stamina to stay on the path when things get difficult? This requires a new kind of training, the training of the mind itself. This brings us to the third great division of the path, the cultivation of samadhi, or mental discipline, which begins with the crucial factor of right effort. We have now laid the foundation of our spiritual home. Through the training in wisdom, we have found our true north with right view and set our course with right intention. Through the training in ethical conduct, we have built the strong, stable walls of a virtuous life with right speech, right action, and right livelihood. We have created a life of integrity, a structure that is sound and honorable. But a house, no matter how well designed, requires energy to maintain. The winds and rains of life will beat against it. The weeds of our old, conditioned habits will constantly try to reclaim the ground. To keep this house in order, to continue the journey, requires a certain kind of power. This brings us to the third great training on the path, the cultivation of samadhi, or mental discipline. And the engine that drives this entire training is the sixth factor of the path, samavayama, or right effort. The word effort in English can be misleading. It often conjures images of struggle, of gritting one's teeth, of tense, forceful striving. This is precisely the wrong kind of effort. We are not trying to wage a violent war against our own minds. We must remember the lesson of the lute string. Too tight and it snaps, too loose and it makes no sound. Right effort is not a battle, it is a wise and joyful cultivation. It is better understood as diligence, persistence, or the application of a steady, gentle, and continuous energy. It is the intelligent energy of a gardener, not the brute force of a demolition worker. It is the commitment to show up for our own inner work, day after day, with patience and kindness. This intelligent energy is not applied randomly. The Buddha, in his role as a master psychologist, provided a beautifully simple and comprehensive four-part strategy for applying our effort in the most effective way possible. This is known as the four great efforts, and they provide a complete framework for transforming the mind. The first of these is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. This is the practice of being a vigilant gatekeeper at the doors of our senses. Unwholesome states like anger, greed, envy, and despair do not arise from nowhere. They are triggered by what we see, hear, and think about. This first effort is about developing the foresight and awareness to recognize a potential trigger and skillfully avert our attention before the negative state can take hold. For example, you are scrolling through your social media feed and you see a post that you know will trigger feelings of anger or envy. The untrained mind dives right in, consuming the content, fuming, and composing an angry reply in its head. The mind practicing right effort recognizes the spark before it becomes a fire. It sees the trigger and makes a conscious choice. This is not a helpful direction for my mind to go. It then gently but firmly disengages, closing the app, putting down the phone, or simply directing the attention to the feeling of the breath. It is the wisdom of not walking down a dark alleyway where you know trouble awaits. It is a proactive, protective measure that saves us immense energy down the line. But what happens if we are not quick enough? What if the gatekeeper was asleep and an unwholesome state has already entered and made itself at home in our mind? This is where the second of the four great efforts comes in. The effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. The key here is the method of abandoning. The untrained impulse is to either suppress the feeling to pretend it isn't there or to fight it directly. Both of these strategies are counterproductive. Suppressing a feeling is like holding a beach ball underwater. It takes immense energy, and the moment you relax, it bursts to the surface with even greater force. Fighting a feeling, like trying to argue with your own anger, only gives it more energy and attention, making it stronger. The skillful method of right effort is different. First, we acknowledge the feeling without judgment. I see you, anger. Then, we can apply one of several antidotes. We can investigate the thought, seeing its impermanent and selfless nature. We can deliberately cultivate the opposite state, such as generating feelings of loving kindness, metta, towards the person we are angry at. Or we can simply withdraw our attention from it, refusing to feed it with more stories and justifications, and place our focus on something neutral or wholesome, like the physical sensations of walking. The negative state, deprived of its fuel, will eventually wither and die on its own. The spiritual path, however, is not just a defensive game of preventing and abandoning the negative. That would be a grim and joyless affair. The next two efforts are about actively cultivating the good. The third great effort is to arouse wholesome states that have not yet arisen. This is the joyful practice of a gardener deliberately planting beautiful flowers. It is the conscious choice to create the causes and conditions for happiness, peace, and compassion to grow within us. If you are feeling in a neutral or even slightly negative state, you can practice this effort by intentionally engaging in an activity that you know lifts your spirit. You might decide to listen to a piece of inspiring music, read a chapter from a wise book, take a walk in nature, make a list of things you are grateful for, or call a friend who makes you laugh. You are not waiting for happiness to strike you like lightning. You are actively, skillfully, and joyfully inviting it into your home. This is a profoundly empowering practice, as it reminds us that we have agency over our own inner climate. Finally, once a wholesome state has arisen, our work is still not done. The mind has a powerful tendency toward entropy. It loves to wander off. The fourth and final great effort is to maintain wholesome states that have already arisen, to develop and nurture them to full maturity. When you experience a moment of genuine peace, kindness, or joy, the practice is to not let it slip away unnoticed. The practice is to savor it. You can do this by turning your full attention to it. Notice how it feels in your body. Is there a warmth in your chest, a lightness in your limbs, a softness in your face? Notice the quality of your mind. Is it spacious? Is it calm? By consciously attending to and appreciating these wholesome states, you are strengthening their neural pathways. You are watering the flowers you just planted, ensuring they grow deep roots and become a more stable and lasting part of your inner landscape. The perfect metaphor for these four great efforts is that of a wise farmer tending their field. The farmer's first action is to build a strong fence to keep out wild animals that would trample the crops. This is the effort of prevention. Inevitably, some weed seeds will blow in on the wind and sprout. The wise farmer walks the fields and, upon seeing a weed, gently but firmly pulls it out by the root so it cannot choke the life from the valuable plants. This is the effort of abandoning. Of course, the farmer does not just focus on the negative. The whole point of the enterprise is to grow something good. So, the farmer deliberately sows good seed corn, wheat, vegetables into the fertile soil. This is the effort of arousing. And once the young sprouts emerge, the farmer's work is dedicated to their growth. They provide water, sunlight, and nutrients, protecting the tender plants so they can grow to their full potential and bear fruit. This is the effort of maintaining. The farmer knows they cannot force the crops to grow by pulling on them. That would only destroy them. All they can do is apply their energy intelligently and persistently to create the ideal conditions for growth to happen naturally. So it is with us. We are the farmers of our own hearts and minds. We cannot force ourselves to be enlightened, but through the steady, balanced, and joyful application of these four great efforts, we create the perfect conditions for wisdom and compassion to ripen within us. But how do we do this? How does the gatekeeper know when an unwholesome thought is at the gate? How does the gardener distinguish a weed from a flower? To perform any of these four efforts effectively requires one crucial foundational faculty. It is the ability to be present, to see clearly what is happening in the garden of the mind from one moment to the next. The gatekeeper must be awake. The gardener must be paying close attention. All of this intelligent effort depends entirely on a stable, non-judgmental moment-to-moment awareness. This is the heart of the entire meditative path, the essential tool for all inner transformation. This brings us to the very pinnacle of the samadhi training, the seventh factor of the path, right mindfulness. We arrive now at the very heart of the path, the central faculty that illuminates all the others. It is the master tool, the foundational skill upon which the entire practice of mental cultivation rests. We have spoken of the need for right effort, for the wise, diligent energy of a gardener. But that gardener needs light to see by. They need the ability to distinguish a weed from a flower, to know what is happening in the garden from moment to moment. This light, this clear, non-judgmental awareness, is the seventh factor of the path, samasati, or right mindfulness. Perhaps no other concept from Buddhist teachings has so thoroughly entered the modern vocabulary, yet it is often profoundly misunderstood. Right mindfulness is not about making your mind blank or stopping your thoughts. This is a common and discouraging misconception that leads many to feel they are failing at the practice. The mind's nature is to produce thoughts, just as a salivary gland's nature is to produce saliva. You cannot, and do not need to, stop it. Mindfulness is something else entirely. It is the art of knowing what is happening in your mind, in your body, and in the world around you, in the present moment, without getting swept away by it. It is the simple, yet radical shift from being lost in thought to being the one who is aware of the thought. It is the difference between being tossed about in the stormy ocean and being the calm, steady lighthouse on the shore, observing the waves as they rise and fall. To develop this quality of awareness, the Buddha provided a comprehensive and systematic training manual, a framework known as the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. This is a step-by-step guide to exploring the entirety of our own human experience. The first foundation, and the primary anchor for our practice, is mindfulness of the body. Why start with the body? Because unlike our thoughts, which are constantly flying to the past or the future, the body is always, unequivocally, in the present moment. It is our most reliable anchor to the now. The most fundamental way to practice this is through mindfulness of breathing. The instruction is beautifully simple. Just notice the sensation of the breath as it enters your body and as it leaves your body. You don't have to change it, deepen it, or improve it. Just feel it. The subtle tingling at the nostrils, the rising and falling of the abdomen. When the mind wanders, as it inevitably will, the practice is to gently, and without any self-criticism, notice that it has wandered, and then kindly escort your attention back to the breath. The breath becomes your home base, a constant, calming refuge you can return to thousands of times a day. This practice extends to all bodily activities. We can practice mindfulness while walking, feeling the contact of our feet on the ground. We can practice it while drinking a cup of tea, feeling its warmth in our hands. We can practice it while eating, transforming a routine, unconscious act into a rich, sensory meditation by noticing the colors, smells, textures, and tastes of our food. By grounding our awareness in the body, we pull our minds out of the anxious narratives of the past and future and into the living reality of the present. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings, or more accurately, of feeling tones. This refers to the immediate pre-verbal quality of any experience. As soon as we see, hear, or think of something, a feeling tone arises. It is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This happens before we layer on our complex stories and judgments. The practice here is to observe these raw feeling tones with a clear, non-reactive awareness. When a pleasant feeling arises from a taste of good food or a kind word, we simply note pleasant. We observe it without clinging to it or demanding that it stay. When an unpleasant feeling arises, like a physical pain or a difficult emotion, we note unpleasant. We observe it with a courageous and gentle curiosity, without pushing it away or falling into aversion. We simply watch as it arises, peaks, and eventually passes away, just like every other experience. This practice is profoundly liberating. It strikes at the very root of our suffering by creating a space between feeling and reaction. It breaks the automatic, conditioned link between a pleasant feeling and the thirst to have more, and between an unpleasant feeling and the thirst to get rid of it. We learn that we do not have to be a slave to our fleeting feelings. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind itself, also known as mindfulness of mind states. Here, we turn the light of awareness onto the quality of our consciousness in any given moment. The practice is to simply recognize what kind of mind is present right now. Is the mind filled with greed or desire, or is it free from greed? Is the mind contracted with anger, or is it open and free from anger? Is the mind scattered and distracted, or is it calm and focused? Is it clouded by doubt, or is it clear? Again, the key is to perform this observation without a secondary layer of judgment. It is not, oh no, my mind is full of anger, I am a bad person and a terrible meditator. It is a simple, clear, almost scientific recognition. There is anger present in the mind now. By naming the state, by shining the light of mindfulness upon it, we cease to identify with it. The anger is no longer me or mine. It is simply an anger, a temporary mental weather pattern passing through the vast sky of our awareness. This simple act of recognition robs the negative state of its unconscious power to control our behavior. The fourth and final foundation is mindfulness of phenomena, or dhammas. This is the most comprehensive practice, where we learn to observe our entire experience through the clarifying lens of the core teachings of the path. We begin to see our experience not as a random personal drama, but as a clear illustration of the laws of cause and effect. We might observe, for example, how a particular sense desire arises in the mind, how it leads to clinging, and how that clinging leads to a subtle form of suffering. We are seeing the second noble truth in real time. Or we might observe the arising of kindness in the heart, and notice how it leads to a feeling of joy and peace. We are seeing the path itself in action. This is where mindfulness and wisdom become one. We are no longer just observing the contents of our experience. We are understanding the very process and structure of that experience. There is a powerful analogy the Buddha used to describe the skillful quality of mindfulness. He said that engaging with a powerful thought or emotion is like trying to catch a wild snake in the jungle. If you are unskilled and you grab the snake by the tail, it will immediately whip around and bite your hand, causing you great harm. This is like the untrained mind grabbing onto an emotion like anger or fear with reactivity and identification. It gets bitten, poisoned by its own unskillful engagement. But a skilled snake handler knows better. They use a forked stick to gently but firmly pin the snake's head to the ground. Once the head is secured, they can safely pick up the snake right behind the head, gaining full control without being harmed. In this analogy, the dangerous snake is a powerful thought or emotion. The forked stick is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the tool that allows us to approach these powerful, wild energies of the mind with skill and courage. It allows us to pin down the thought, to see it clearly for what it is, an impersonal, impermanent event before we get bitten by it. It doesn't kill the snake, but it gives us mastery over it. This practice is the ultimate antidote to the anxiety and stress of modern life. Stress is almost never caused by the present moment itself. It is caused by our minds being lost in worry about the future or regret about the past. By training ourselves again and again to come back home to the present moment, to the anchor of our breath and our body, we are stepping out of the virtual reality of our anxieties and into the solid ground of what is actually happening. As we practice this gentle, persistent returning to the now, a remarkable quality begins to emerge in the mind. The frantic, scattered energy of the monkey mind begins to calm. The muddy water of our thoughts begins to settle. The mind, anchored by mindfulness, becomes less distractible, more stable, more unified. It gains a new quality of steadiness and composure. This emerging stability is not an end in itself. It is the gateway to even deeper states of peace and insight. This natural fruit of a mindful mind leads us to the eighth and final factor of the path, the culmination of the training in mental discipline, right concentration. We have now arrived at the eighth and final factor of the noble path, the culmination of our training in mental discipline. This is samma samadhi, or right concentration. It is crucial to understand that this state is not something we can force into existence through sheer will. Rather, it is the natural and beautiful fruit that ripens when all the other 7 factors of the path are cultivated together. When the mind is guided by right view and right intention, when it is stabilized and unburdened by the guilt and remorse that come from wrong speech, action, and livelihood, and when it is energized by right effort and held steady by the gentle anchor of right mindfulness, it naturally settles into a state of profound unity and calm. What then is this state of concentration? We experience ordinary concentration all the time. A musician is concentrated when lost in a piece of music. A surgeon is concentrated during a delicate operation. A child is concentrated while building a tower of blocks. But right concentration is different in quality and purpose. Ordinary concentration can be tense, narrow, and often mixed with desire. The desire to win the game, to perform the surgery perfectly, to not let the tower fall. Right concentration, however, is born of letting go. It is a state of unification, of one-pointedness of mind that is free from clinging and aversion. The mind is not being forced to stay on its object of meditation. It rests there willingly, happily, because it has become a place of profound peace and pleasure. The frantic energy of the monkey mind has finally been soothed, and it is content to remain still. For many, the object of this concentration is the same one we began with in our mindfulness practice, the breath, but the relationship to it changes. In mindfulness, we are often noticing the breath and then noticing the mind wandering away, and then gently bringing it back. In concentration, the mind settles upon the breath so completely that the distinction between the observer and the observed begins to soften. The endless stream of distracting thoughts, sounds, and sensations fades into the distant background, losing all power to disturb the mind's tranquility. The mind becomes gathered, unified, and imbued with a quiet, powerful strength. As this concentration deepens, it can lead to a series of profound states of meditative absorption known as the jhanas. These are not mystical or magical states. They are natural potentials of a purified human consciousness, states of supreme well-being that are generated entirely from within, independent of any external pleasure. In the first of these states, the mind is filled with an explosive sense of vibrant joy and happiness, born from its seclusion from the common mental hindrances like sensual desire and ill will. As the concentration deepens further, this ecstatic joy settles into a more subtle, radiant happiness and profound tranquility. Deeper still, even this sublime happiness fades away, replaced by a state of pure, unshakable equanimity, a peace so profound that it cannot be disturbed by anything. The mind is utterly still, silent, and luminous. To describe these states is merely to point a finger at the moon. Their purpose in this path is to show us, through direct experience, that it is possible to achieve a level of happiness and peace far greater than anything the fleeting pleasures of the world can offer. This experience gives us the faith and energy to continue on the path, as it proves that a release from suffering is truly possible. The most useful analogy for understanding the function of right concentration is that of a glass of muddy water. Imagine holding up a glass filled with water and a large amount of dirt and sediment. The water is cloudy, opaque. You cannot see through it at all. This is the ordinary, untrained, mind-agitated, restless, and clouded by the 5 hindrances of desire, ill will, laziness, anxiety, and doubt. Now, if you wanted to see through the water, what would you do? You would not stir it more vigorously, as that would only make it cloudier. You would not try to pick out each particle of dirt one by one. The method is incredibly simple. You just set the glass down on a steady surface and let it be. You allow it to become perfectly still. And what happens? Through the natural law of gravity, the heavy particles of mud and sediment slowly, gently, begin to settle at the bottom of the glass. Over time, the water becomes progressively clearer until finally it is perfectly transparent. You can now see right through it. The mind is exactly like this glass of water. Right concentration is the practice of letting the mind become still, of allowing it to rest without agitation. As we do this, the mud of the mental hindrances naturally settles down. The mind's own innate nature, which is luminous, bright, and clear, is revealed. We are not creating a new quality of clarity. We are simply allowing the obscurations to settle so that the clarity that was always there can shine forth. This brings us to the ultimate purpose of right concentration. The state of profound calm and clarity is not the final goal of the path. It is the preparation of the perfect tool. In Buddhist meditation, there are 2 intertwined qualities that are cultivated, like 2 wings of a great bird that work together to create flight. The first wing is samatha, which means calm or tranquility. This is what we develop through right concentration. It is the stilling of the mind, the creation of the clear water. The second wing is vipassana, which means insight or clear seeing. This is the wisdom aspect of the path. Samatha, the calm mind, creates the ideal conditions for vipassana, the deep insight, to arise. Once the water in the glass is clear, we can use it to see. Once the mind is stable, unified, and profoundly still through concentration, it becomes an instrument of incredible power and precision, like a high-powered microscope or a laser beam. We can now turn this purified awareness back onto our own experience to investigate its true nature, not as a philosophical idea, but as a direct, living reality. With this sharp and steady mind, we can look at a feeling of anger and see its selfless, impermanent nature so clearly that it dissolves before our eyes. We can examine the structure of our own ego and see that it is an empty construction, a process rather than a thing. We can observe the subtle arising and passing of every moment and experience the truth of impermanence, not as a sad fact, but as the vibrant, creative dance of the universe. The truths we contemplated in right view are no longer just concepts in our head. They become visceral, transformative, and liberating insights that free the heart. We have now completed our journey through the 8 factors of this noble path. We began with the compass of wisdom to guide our way. We then built the strong vehicle of ethical conduct to carry us. And now, we have cultivated the powerful engine of mental discipline, culminating in this state of profound, workable clarity. But the journey is not over. We have simply arrived at a high mountain plateau with a perfect telescope. The purpose of achieving this clarity is not merely to enjoy the peaceful view. The purpose is to see. It is now time to turn this powerful, concentrated mind back toward the world of our experience, to investigate its fundamental nature with a precision and depth that was previously impossible. We will now use this tool of the concentrated mind to look directly at the truths of right view, not as theories, but as living realities, beginning with the ever-present, ever-flowing river of impermanence. With the mind now gathered, still and clear, like a perfectly polished lens, we are ready to begin the profound work of seeing. The first and most fundamental reality that this concentrated mind reveals is the truth of anicca, or impermanence. This is the great, universal, and undeniable law of existence. Everything that arises must pass away. Everything is in a state of constant, unrelenting flux. To see this clearly, not as a depressing philosophy, but as the vibrant, dynamic nature of life itself, is to unlock the first great door to freedom. We can see this truth on the grandest of scales. We see it in the turning of the seasons, as the vibrant green of summer yields to the decay of autumn, which in turn gives way to the stillness of winter and the rebirth of spring. We see it in the night sky, where stars are born in fiery nebulas, shine for billions of years, and then die in spectacular explosions, their dust forming new worlds. We see it in the very ground beneath our feet, where mountains are slowly, imperceptibly pushed up and then worn down by wind and rain over eons. Nothing, absolutely nothing, is static. The entire cosmos is a single, immense river of change. We see this truth in the arc of our own lives. We look at old photographs and see a face that is barely recognizable as our own. The infant becomes a child, the child a teenager, the teenager an adult, the adult an elder. Our bodies are in a constant process of renewal and decay. Our relationships shift and change. Friends move away, romances blossom and fade, family dynamics evolve. Our careers, our homes, our beliefs, our opinions, none of them are immune. To be alive is to be in a state of transformation. The only true stasis is death. Yet, for all its undeniable truth, our deepest instinct is to fight it. Herein lies the root of so much of our dukkha. Our suffering arises not from the fact of change, but from our deep-seated, desperate resistance to it. We build our lives as if we are constructing a permanent brick house, when in reality, we are living in a tent on the banks of a flowing river. We fall in love and desperately cling to the peak moments of passion, trying to freeze them in time. We achieve a measure of success and live in constant anxiety, trying to protect it from the inevitable shifts in fortune. We experience a moment of profound peace in meditation, and then spend the rest of our practice trying to recreate that specific experience, rather than being open to what is actually present now. We are constantly trying to grasp smoke, to hold water in our fists. This struggle against the fundamental nature of reality is utterly exhausting, and it is a battle we can never win. The real practice of seeing impermanence, however, happens not on the scale of years or seasons, but on the scale of moments. With the sharp tool of the concentrated mind, we can observe this constant flux within our own direct experience. We begin with the breath. Each in-breath has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It arises, sustains for a moment, and then ceases, making space for the out-breath, which follows the exact same pattern. The breath is a perfect, miniature model of anicca, a ceaseless, rhythmic dance of arising and passing. It is never the same. We then turn this awareness to the field of our physical sensations. An itch appears on your arm. You observe it with mindful attention. You can feel it arise, perhaps intensify, and then, if you do not scratch it, it will eventually fade away on its own. A feeling of warmth from a cup of tea spreads through your hands, and then slowly dissipates. Aches and pains come and go. In this way, we begin to experience the body not as a solid, static object, but as a vibrant, shimmering field of constantly changing sensations. Most powerfully, we apply this insight to the flow of our own minds. With a stable, concentrated awareness, we can sit back and simply watch the parade of our thoughts and emotions. A thought of the future arises. We note it without getting on the train. We watch as it holds our attention for a few seconds and then dissolves, replaced by a memory from the past. That too fades, replaced by a neutral sensation, which is then followed by a wave of sadness. We watch the sadness. We feel its texture, its quality in the body, and we watch as it too changes and eventually passes, like a cloud moving across the sky. Through this direct observation, we break our lifelong habit of identifying with our mental states. The thought is no longer me. The sadness is no longer mine. They are simply impersonal, impermanent events, a rising and ceasing in awareness due to causes and conditions. This insight alone can free us from oceans of suffering. To truly embrace impermanence is not to become cynical or nihilistic. It is, in fact, the gateway to a more profound and resilient form of joy. It offers two immense gifts. The first is hope. Because of anicca, no state of suffering is permanent. When we are lost in the depths of grief, anxiety, or physical pain, the clear seeing of impermanence is a lifeline. This pain, this despair, this difficult situation, it is conditioned, and therefore it is subject to change. It will not last forever. This, too, shall pass, ceases to be a mere platitude, and becomes a statement of fundamental law, a source of incredible strength and patience in the face of adversity. The second gift is preciousness. Impermanence is what gives every moment of our lives its value. A sunset is beautiful precisely because it is fleeting. If the sky were permanently painted in brilliant shades of orange and pink, we would quickly grow bored of it and cease to notice its beauty. The time we spend with those we love is precious precisely because we know it is finite. The sound of a beautiful piece of music is moving because each note dies to give birth to the next. Anicca is a constant invitation from the universe to wake up and be fully present for the unique, unrepeatable, and sacred gift of this very moment. It is an antidote to taking life for granted. There is a famous insight from the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus that perfectly mirrors this Buddhist teaching, showing that this is a universal truth accessible to all who look deeply. He said, "No one ever steps in the same river twice." We often focus on the first part of that statement, the river is always flowing, the water is different from moment to moment. This is a perfect image of the external world of anicca. But the second part of the saying is even more profound, for it's not the same river, and you are not the same person. The river is changing, but so are we. The person who steps into the water is also a process, a flow of changing cells, thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. We too are a river. This profound realization that the observer is just as impermanent as the observed leads us to an even deeper question. As we sit on the bank of this river of experience, watching everything flow by sights, sounds, thoughts, feelings, the world itself, a question begins to form in the quiet, concentrated mind. Who or what is the one who is watching? If the body is changing, the feelings are changing, and the thoughts are changing, what is this I that seems to be the stable center of it all? Is the watcher also just another current in the river? To investigate this question is to move from the first mark of existence to the third and most liberating insight of the Buddha, the very heart of his teaching on freedom, the truth of not, self, or anatta. Having used the concentrated mind to see the universal river of impermanence, we are now poised to ask the most penetrating question of all. If everything is in flux, our bodies, our feelings, our thoughts, then who is the one experiencing this flux? Who is this I that sits at the center of our universe, the unchanging witness to a changing world? The investigation into this question leads us to the third mark of existence, the most subtle, challenging, and ultimately liberating of the Buddha's insights, the truth of anatta, or not, self. Before we proceed, it is essential to be clear about what this does not mean. Anatta does not mean that you do not exist. It is not a doctrine of nihilism or annihilation. You are here, alive, experiencing this moment. Rather, anatta is the radical assertion that you do not exist in the way that you think you do. The idea we carry around of a solid, continuous, independent self, a little person, a CEO, a soul inside the machine of the body, who is the permanent owner of our thoughts and feelings, is an illusion. It is a deeply ingrained, culturally reinforced, and useful illusion for navigating the world, but upon close examination, it dissolves into thin air. To see this for ourselves, we can use the focused power of our mind to conduct a systematic investigation, just as the Buddha did. We can deconstruct our entire being into its constituent parts, what are known as the 5 aggregates, and search for this elusive self. First, we look at the aggregate of form. This is our physical body, with all its parts and processes. Is this body the real, essential you? It is subject to the law of impermanence. It was born, It grows, it will age, get sick, and die. It is not under our absolute command. We cannot order it to not feel pain or to not grow old. It is composed entirely of not body elements, the food, water, and air that we have consumed. It is a temporary collection of physical processes, so the body cannot be the permanent self we are looking for. Second, we examine the aggregate of feeling. These are the raw feeling tones that arise from moment to moment, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Are these feelings the real you? They are utterly fleeting, like bubbles on the surface of water. One moment there is happiness, the next boredom, the next irritation. If we were our feelings, our self would be different every few seconds. These are simply impersonal responses to sensory contact. They cannot be the self. Third, we investigate perception. This is the mind's faculty of recognition and labeling. It sees a shape and color and labels it tree. It feels a sensation and labels it sadness. It hears a sound and labels it music. Are these perceptions the real you? Our perceptions are conditioned by our past experiences, our language, our culture, and our mood. Two people can look at the same event and perceive it in completely different ways. Perceptions are unreliable, conditioned, and constantly changing. They cannot be the self. Fourth, we turn to the most complex aggregate, mental formations. This includes all our thoughts, our opinions, our beliefs, our moods, our memories, our habits, our intentions, and our desires. This is the collection of processes we most closely identify with our personality. But is this the real you? Our opinions change with new information. Our beliefs can be proven wrong. Our moods are as fickle as the weather. Our thoughts arise and cease, often unbidden. This vast, chaotic, and ever-shifting stream of mental activity is a process, not a static entity. It cannot be the permanent, stable self we seek. Finally, having found no self in the body, feelings, perceptions, or mental formations, we look at the last candidate, consciousness. This is the basic faculty of knowing, the awareness that is aware of all the other aggregates. Surely this, the ultimate observer, must be the real me. But the Buddha's insight was even more radical. He taught that even consciousness is not a solid, independent thing. It is a dependent process. Visual consciousness arises only when an eye, a light, and a visible object come together. Auditory consciousness arises only when an ear and a sound come together. It does not exist on its own. It is not a continuous floodlight shining on the world, but a series of discrete, flickering moments of knowing, each one arising and ceasing with its object. It, too, is part of the selfless, conditioned flow. So, after this exhaustive investigation, the verdict is clear. We have taken apart the entire machine of our being, and nowhere can we find a separate, permanent, unchanging driver. The self is a ghost in the machine. It is a verb masquerading as a noun. It is the dynamic, interdependent process of these five aggregates arising and ceasing together. A famous and brilliant dialogue from an ancient text called The Questions of King Milinda makes this abstract concept perfectly clear. A Greek king in India, Milinda, approaches a wise Buddhist sage named Nagasena. The king asks his name. Nagasena replies that he is known as Nagasena, but this is only a conventional designation, a name for a collection of parts, and that no permanent person can be found. The king, a sharp debater, is incredulous. He points to his magnificent chariot and challenges the sage. He asks, is the chariot the pole? Is it the axle? Is it the wheels, the frame, the reins, or the yoke? Nagasena, of course, answers no to each question. Then the king asks, is the chariot something else, separate from all these parts? Nagasena again says no. The king triumphantly declares that Nagasena must be lying, for if the chariot is neither the parts nor something separate from the parts, then the chariot does not exist. Nagasena then calmly turns the questioning back on the king. Your Majesty, he says, how did you arrive here today? On foot or in a vehicle? The king replies that he came in his chariot. Then, Your Majesty, Nagasena says, please define this chariot for me. You have just said it is neither the parts nor something separate from them. The king is stumped. Nagasena then explains, chariot is simply a convenient name, a useful label that we apply to the functional assembly of the pole, the axle, the wheels, and all the other parts. It has no separate, inherent existence of its own. It is empty of any essential chariotness. He then concludes, so it is with Nagasena. It is a convenient name for the assembly of the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. But upon investigation, no permanent, independent person is found. This insight is not a cause for fear, but the very key to liberation. The belief in a solid, separate self is the ultimate root of our suffering. It is this self that feels it must compete with others, that feels pride in success and shame in failure. It is this self that feels wounded by criticism and puffed up by praise. It is this self that feels the gnawing anxiety of loneliness and the terror of its own eventual annihilation. It is a prison constructed of our own mistaken identity. When our deep, intuitive belief in this separate self begins to weaken, the walls of the prison begin to dissolve. There is less to defend, less to promote, less to worry about. The constant, exhausting project of propping up and polishing our ego can finally be set down. The sharp, painful distinction between my suffering and your suffering begins to soften and blur. We start to see that the same impersonal processes of thought and feeling that operate within the self also operate within all others. The feeling of being an isolated subject, looking out at a world of separate objects, gives way to a sense of profound kinship and interconnectedness. This dissolving of the ego's fortress is what opens the door to the boundless states of the heart. It is what allows us to move from an intellectual understanding of our shared humanity to a lived, felt experience of universal love. This profound insight of not-self is the fertile ground from which grows the beautiful and healing flower of compassion. As the solid, defensive walls of the separate self begin to grow transparent through the insight of anatta, the heart does not become empty or cold. Instead, it becomes porous, open, and exquisitely sensitive to the world. The illusion of separation is the primary barrier to love. When it dissolves, what naturally rushes in to fill the space is a profound sense of kinship, of interconnectedness with all of life. This is not a sentimental feeling that we must force ourselves to have. It is the heart's spontaneous and intelligent response to seeing things as they truly are. This seeing is the fertile ground from which grow the two most beautiful flowers on the Buddhist path, the twin faces of active love, metta or loving, kindness and karuna or compassion. These two qualities, while deeply related, have distinct flavors. Metta is like the radiant warmth of the sun, offered freely and indiscriminately to all. It is the unconditional wish for all beings to be happy and well. It is a proactive state of friendliness and benevolence, a quiet, constant prayer of the heart that says, "May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you live with ease." Metta is the direct antidote to anger, ill will, and resentment. It is a general wish for the flourishing of all life. Karuna, on the other hand, is the heart's specific response to the presence of suffering. It is the quiver of the heart when it encounters pain, and the active wish, "May you be free from this suffering." It is not just feeling sorry for someone. It is the deep desire to act, to reach out, to alleviate the burden of another. If metta is the wish for a child to be happy while they are playing, karuna is the impulse to soothe them when they have fallen and scraped their knee. Together, they form a complete and powerful expression of a liberated heart. These boundless states are not just for saints or sages. They are qualities that can be deliberately and systematically cultivated by anyone. The primary method for this is the practice of metta meditation. It is a gentle but profound training of the heart, which typically unfolds in 5 stages, like ripples expanding outward on a pond. We begin, perhaps surprisingly, with ourselves. We cannot offer water to others from an empty well. If our own heart is filled with self-criticism and judgment, any love we try to send to others will be hollow. So, we sit quietly and offer the phrases of loving kindness to ourselves. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease. For many of us, this is the most difficult stage. But it is essential. It is a radical act of self-compassion, a necessary first step in healing the wounds of our own inner critic. Once we have established a baseline of warmth for ourselves, we bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom it is easy and natural to feel love and appreciation. We hold their image in our mind and radiate the phrases of metta toward them. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, may you live with ease. We allow the feelings of warmth, care, and affection to flow freely. This stage helps the heart to open and reminds us of what this feeling of uncomplicated love is like. The third stage is to expand the circle of kindness to include a neutral person. This might be a cashier at a grocery store, a neighbor we see but do not know, or someone we sit next to on the bus. We bring this person to mind and extend the same wishes to them. May you be happy, may you be well. This is a crucial step. It trains the heart to break its habit of indifference. It teaches us to see the humanity in strangers, to recognize that these neutral people are the protagonists of their own complex lives, and that they, just like us and our friends, wish to be happy. The fourth stage is the most challenging and transformative. We bring to mind a difficult person, someone who has hurt us, angered us, or with whom we have a conflict. Here, the practice is not to condone their harmful actions or to force ourselves to like them. The practice is to see, with wisdom, that their harmful actions almost certainly spring from their own suffering, their own ignorance, and their own pain. We wish for them to be happy, because a truly happy and peaceful person does not cause harm to others. We wish for them to be free from their own suffering, because their suffering is the source of the suffering they inflict. This is a profound practice of forgiveness. It is not for their benefit, but for our own. It is the act of releasing the hot coal of resentment from our own heart. Finally, having trained the heart in these progressive stages, we let go of all specific individuals and allow the feeling of metta to become boundless. We radiate it outward in all directions: front, back, left, right, up, and down. We extend it to all beings everywhere, without distinction, all humans, all animals, all creatures seen and unseen, near and far, friends, enemies, and strangers alike. May all beings in the world be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. In this moment, the practice breaks down the final barriers of the conceptual self. The heart merges with all of life in a state of vast, empathetic connection. It is here that we can truly understand the difference between compassion and its near enemy, pity. Pity is a feeling of separation. It looks down from a position of superiority and says, "Oh, that poor thing. I am so glad that I am not in their position." Pity reinforces the ego. It strengthens the wall between me and you. Compassion, or karuna, is born from the wisdom of interconnectedness. It is a feeling of shared humanity. It says, "I recognize the suffering in you because I know the nature of suffering within myself. Your pain is not foreign to me. We are in this together." Compassion dissolves the ego. It is the recognition of ourselves in the face of another, and it is this recognition that gives rise to the genuine impulse to help. The Buddha himself was the ultimate embodiment of this active, fearless compassion. There is a moving story of a monk named Putigata Tissa, whose body became afflicted with terrible festering sores. His condition was so foul that his robe stuck to his skin, and the other monks, repulsed by the smell and the sight, left him utterly alone in his own filth and misery. The Buddha, knowing the monk's plight through his deep awareness, went to the infirmary. He did not send a delegate. He went himself. He boiled water, and with his own hands, he began to gently wash the monk's diseased body, cleaning his wounds and soaking his soiled robes. The other monks, seeing this, were filled with awe and shame. The Buddha then looked at them and delivered a timeless teaching on compassion. "Monks," he said, "you have no mother and no father here to look after you. If you do not care for one another, who else will? Whoever would tend to the sick and suffering among you is, in effect, tending to me." This is the heart of the practice. It is not an abstract feeling, but a hands-on, courageous engagement with the reality of suffering, free from fear and aversion. As this boundless love and compassion become a more stable and abiding presence in our hearts, we find that our inner landscape begins to change in other beautiful ways. When we see others find happiness and success, our heart, now free from the constricting poison of envy, is able to share in their good fortune. And as we continue to face the inevitable 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows of life, our heart, now grounded in this vast, caring awareness, discovers a new and profound level of balance and peace. These final two qualities complete the quartet of what are known as the divine abodes, the most sublime states of the heart. They are the beautiful fruits of a mind and heart that have been liberated by wisdom and compassion, sympathetic joy and equanimity. As the boundless states of loving kindness and compassion become more established in the heart, a natural evolution occurs. The heart, now accustomed to wishing well for all beings and responding with care to their suffering, begins to develop two further sublime qualities. These are the final two of the four divine abodes, or Brahma Viharas, the most elevated and beautiful states of a liberated consciousness. They are the crowning jewels of a heart that has been trained in wisdom, mudita, or sympathetic joy, and upekkha, or equanimity. Let us first explore mudita. This is the practice of feeling genuine, unselfish joy in the happiness and success of others. In many ways, this can be one of the most challenging of the four states to cultivate, for it is the direct and powerful antidote to one of the most deeply ingrained and poisonous of all human emotions, envy. Envy is a peculiar form of self-inflicted suffering. We feel miserable precisely because someone else is happy. It operates from a place of scarcity, a deeply held belief that happiness is a finite resource and that another person's success somehow diminishes our own. It is a state of mind that isolates us, creates resentment, and turns the good fortune of others into a source of personal pain. Mudita completely flips this script. It is the conscious and joyful celebration of another's well-being. It is the ability to hear of a friend's promotion, a sibling's happy relationship, or even a stranger's lucky break, and to feel a genuine warmth, a sincere happiness for them. It is the realization that joy is not a zero-sum game. Another person lighting their candle does not extinguish our own. It only adds more light to the world. To practice mudita, we can consciously bring to mind the good fortune of others and allow ourselves to share in their happiness. This practice radically expands our own potential for joy. If we are only happy when good things happen to us, our opportunities for happiness are quite limited. But if we can learn to be happy whenever good things happen to anyone, we suddenly have billions of new reasons to feel joy every single day. Mudita dissolves the poison of envy and replaces it with a light, expansive, and deeply connecting sense of shared celebration. It is the heart's participation in the happiness of the world. As wonderful as this sympathetic joy is, the path culminates in an even more profound and subtle state, the great protector of the heart and the foundation for unshakable peace. This is upekkha, or equanimity. If metta is the warmth of the sun, karuna the response to tears, and mudita the sharing of laughter, then upekkha is the vast, silent, and spacious sky in which all these weather patterns take place. It is a state of profound mental balance, of composure, of being untouched by the shifting winds of life. In the Buddha's teachings, these are called the 8 worldly winds: pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute. The ordinary, untrained mind is constantly being blown about by these winds, elated one moment by praise and devastated the next by criticism, ecstatic when we gain something and miserable when we lose it. Equanimity is the development of a deep inner stability that allows us to experience all of these highs and lows without losing our center. It is absolutely crucial here to distinguish equanimity from its near enemy, indifference. Indifference is a state of emotional shutdown. It is a cold, withdrawn apathy that says, "I don't care. It doesn't matter to me." Indifference is a form of aversion, a defense mechanism to avoid being hurt. It is a closing of the heart. Equanimity is the very opposite. It is born from a heart that is completely open, engaged, and filled with immense care. But this care is tempered by profound wisdom. Equanimity does not say, "I don't care." It says, "I care deeply about the well-being of all." but I understand that I cannot control the outcomes. My own inner peace will not be held hostage by the praise or blame of others, or by the inevitable gains and losses of life. It is a peace that comes from radically accepting the truth of impermanence. Because it understands that all states are fleeting, it does not cling desperately to the pleasant or push away violently at the unpleasant. It allows life to flow, with all its joys and sorrows, through a spacious and peaceful awareness. This profound balance is not a feeling we can simply will into existence. It is the natural result of deeply understanding the truths of not-self and impermanence. When we see clearly that praise and blame are directed not at a solid, real me, but at a constantly changing concept of a self, their sting and their sweetness lose their power. When we understand deeply that all worldly gains, possessions, status, even relationships are, by their very nature, impermanent, we can enjoy them while they last, without being shattered when they change or disappear. Equanimity is wisdom made manifest in the heart. A classic Zen story perfectly illustrates this quality in action. A great Zen master was sitting quietly when a man strode up to him and began unleashing a torrent of insults, calling him a fraud and a fool. The master sat in perfect stillness, listening calmly and attentively until the man had exhausted his anger and fallen silent. The master then asked him a simple question. "My friend, if you buy a gift for someone and that person does not accept your gift, to whom does the gift then belong?" The man, taken aback, replied, "Well, it would belong to me, of course. I am the one who bought it." The master nodded gently. "Exactly," he said. "And so it is with your anger and your insults. You have offered them to me, but I do not accept them. This is equanimity." The master was not indifferent. He was fully present, listening with care. But his inner peace was not dependent on the other man's opinion. He did not take the gift of the man's anger into his own heart, and so he remained free. This is the great protection of upekkha. These four sublime states, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, form a complete psychological and spiritual system. Metta is the proactive wish for happiness. Karuna is the heart's response when happiness is absent. Mudita is the heart's response when happiness is present. And upekkha is the vast, wisdom-filled container that holds all the others, ensuring that our love is boundless but not clinging, that our compassion is powerful but not draining, and that our joy is pure but not attached. It is what makes our good heart unshakable. We have now assembled a complete and beautiful toolkit for cultivating a wise and compassionate mind. We have the insights of wisdom, the guidelines of ethical living, and now the sublime attitudes of a liberated heart. But how do we apply these advanced tools when we find ourselves in the heat of a real-life emotional storm? How do we access the calm of equanimity when a powerful surge of raw primal anger arises from deep within us? How do we apply compassion when we are gripped by the paralyzing hand of fear? The path now moves from the general cultivation of these states to their direct, practical application in the face of life's most challenging moments. We will begin by looking at one of the most common and destructive of these inner storms, and a core Buddhist teaching on how to navigate it without causing more harm to ourselves or others. The powerful lesson of the second arrow. We have now traveled far on this inner journey. We have equipped ourselves with the wisdom to see clearly, the ethical framework to live with integrity, and the sublime attitudes of a heart cultivated in love and equanimity. This is the ideal. This is the training. But life is the testing ground, and life will inevitably send its storms. All the theory and practice find their true meaning when we are faced with the raw, visceral, and often overwhelming power of a difficult emotion. One of the most powerful and destructive of these storms is anger. For many of us, anger feels like a failure of the spiritual path. We think that to be peaceful or wise means to never feel anger again. This is a misunderstanding. Anger is a natural human energy, a primal response to perceived threat or injustice. The path is not about eradicating anger, which is an impossible task. It is about fundamentally transforming our relationship to it. It is about learning to meet the fire of anger, not with more fire, but with the cool, spacious awareness we have been cultivating. The key to this transformation lies in one of the Buddha's most practical and profound teachings, the lesson of the second arrow. The Buddha said that when an ordinary, untrained person in the world experiences a painful feeling, it is as if they have been struck by an arrow. This is the first arrow. It is the unavoidable pain of life. It is the sting of a harsh criticism from your boss. It is the physical pain of a sudden illness or injury. It is the grief of a loss. It is the frustration of being stuck in traffic when you are already late. These first arrows are an inevitable part of the human condition. They will happen to all of us. No amount of meditation or wisdom will make you immune to the first arrows of life. But the untrained person, the Buddha explained, does not stop there. Immediately after being struck by the first arrow, they shoot themselves with a second one. This second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. It is the anger, the outrage, the resentment. It is the self-pity, the victimhood, the rumination. The first arrow was the criticism from your boss. The second arrow is the internal monologue. How dare he speak to me like that? He's always trying to undermine me. This is so unfair. I hate this job. I'm a failure. The first arrow was a moment of pain. The second arrow is a long, self-inflicted campaign of suffering that can last for hours, days, or even years. The Buddha's teaching is simple and radical. The first arrow is mandatory, but the second arrow is optional. The vast majority of our mental suffering comes not from the events of our lives, but from the second arrows we repeatedly shoot into our own hearts. The entire practice of working with anger is learning how not to pick up and fire that second arrow. So, how do we do this? How do we intercept that habitual reaction in the heat of the moment? The process involves applying the very tools we have been developing on the path. The first step is recognition. This is the application of right mindfulness. When the feeling of anger begins to surge, our first task is to simply notice that it is there. We often get so swept away by the story of our anger that we are not even aware of the raw feeling itself. The practice is to drop the story for a moment and turn your attention to the physical sensations. Notice the heat rising in your face and chest. Notice the clenching in your jaw and your fists. Notice the rapid heartbeat, the tightening in your stomach. We say to ourselves with a clear, non-judgmental inner voice, anger is present. This is what anger feels like. This simple act of recognition is incredibly powerful. It creates a tiny wedge of space between the stimulus and our habitual reaction. It is the moment the snake handler sees the snake before grabbing it. The second step is acceptance. This is where we apply the compassion and equanimity we have been cultivating. Our normal instinct is to treat anger as an enemy. We either try to suppress it, I shouldn't feel this way, or we immediately act it out, venting it on others. Both of these are forms of aversion. The skillful path is to allow the feeling to be there, without judgment and without needing it to go away. We give the anger space. We let it be a guest in our house, albeit an uncomfortable one. We don't have to agree with it or believe its stories, but we also don't have to fight it. This non-resistance is a profound act of kindness to ourselves. It takes away the fuel of the second arrow, which is the judgment that we are bad for feeling angry. The third step is investigation. This is applying the wisdom of right view. Now that we have created some space around the anger, we can look at it with curiosity. What is this experience, really? We continue to watch the physical sensations. We notice that anger is not one solid thing. It is a constellation of changing, vibrating energies. We watch the thoughts that are fueling the anger. We can see them as just thoughts, not as absolute truths. We are watching the anger through the lens of impermanence, anicca, seeing that it is a temporary weather pattern, not a permanent part of our identity. It arose due to causes and conditions, and it will cease due to causes and conditions. The fourth step is the culmination of this process, non-identification. This is the direct application of the insight into not-self, anatta. We shift our language and our perspective from "I am angry" to "there is anger being felt in this mind and body." This is a monumental shift. When we say "I am angry," we have fused our entire identity with the temporary emotion. We are the anger. But when we see that anger is simply an impersonal energy passing through our awareness, we are no longer its victim. We are the spacious, calm sky, and the anger is just a dark cloud passing through. It is not us. It does not define us. This depersonalization robs the anger of its core power. After we have created this space and stability, we can then apply a more active antidote, drawing upon our practice of compassion. We can look at the person or situation that triggered our anger and try to see the suffering behind it. The person who insulted us is likely acting from their own pain, fear, or insecurity. A person who is genuinely happy and at peace does not go around causing harm. By wishing for them to be free from their own suffering, we perform an act of emotional alchemy. We use the energy of the situation to generate compassion rather than hatred. This is not for them, it is for us. It is the act of applying a cool, healing balm to the wound in our own heart, preventing the poison of resentment from taking root. This entire process transforms anger from a destructive master into a valuable teacher. It becomes an internal alarm bell that signals to us that something is out of balance, that we are clinging to an expectation, or that a boundary has been crossed. It becomes an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to deepen our wisdom, and to cultivate a brave and compassionate heart. This skillful means of working with difficult emotions is not limited to anger, which is often a reaction to the past. But what about the emotions directed at the future? What about the cold, creeping fog of anxiety and the paralyzing monster of fear? To be truly free, we must also learn to bring this same mindful, compassionate awareness to these shadows. We must learn the art of making friends with our fear. We have looked at anger, the fiery storm that blows in from the past. Now we turn our attention to its shadowy siblings, the emotions that live in the imagined future. Fear, and its chronic, low-grade form, anxiety. If anger is a burning fire, anxiety is a cold, damp fog that can seep into every corner of our lives, robbing the present moment of its color and vitality. Fear can be a great, roaring monster that paralyzes us, or a constant, whispering critic that undermines our confidence and limits our potential. For many in the modern world, anxiety is the default background state, a hum of unease that never quite disappears. The path of wisdom does not offer a magic spell to banish fear forever. Instead, it offers something far more profound and sustainable, the courage and the method to make friends with our fear. To do this, we must first understand its roots. Where does fear come from? From a wisdom perspective, fear is almost always born from two fundamental attachments. The first is our attachment to a future outcome. We fear not getting something we want: a job, a promotion, a partner's approval, or we fear losing something we have: our health, our financial security, our reputation, our loved ones. All of these are forms of tanha, the thirst, projected onto a future that has not yet happened and in fact does not exist anywhere but in our own minds. We are suffering in the present moment because of a story we are telling ourselves about the future. The second and deeper root of fear is our attachment to the very idea of a solid, separate self. This is the ego, the I that we work so hard to protect and promote. We fear public speaking because this I might be judged or embarrassed. We fear failure because this I will be seen as inadequate. We fear sickness and death because this I, this entity we believe ourselves to be, will be harmed or ultimately annihilated. The more solid our sense of self, the more there is to be afraid for. The self becomes a fragile treasure that we must constantly guard, creating a life of perpetual, low-grade anxiety. The practice of making friends with fear begins with a radical, counterintuitive move. Our lifelong habit is to run from fear. We distract ourselves with entertainment. We numb ourselves with food or drink. We compulsively check our phones, anything to avoid feeling the raw, uncomfortable energy of anxiety. The mindful path invites us to do the opposite. It invites us to gently and with great courage turn toward the fear, not to analyze it, not to justify it, but to feel it. The primary practice is to drop out of the catastrophic stories in your head and bring your awareness directly into your body. When fear arises, where do you feel it? For most people, it has a distinct physical signature. Perhaps it's a tightness in the chest, a cold knot in the pit of the stomach. Perhaps it's a shallow, rapid breath, a racing heart, a trembling in the hands, or a tension in the shoulders. The practice is to rest your attention right in the center of these physical sensations. Get curious about them. Are they solid, or are they vibrating? Are they static, or are they changing? We are not trying to make them go away. We are simply bringing a kind, spacious, and accepting awareness to them. It is like holding a frightened child. You don't tell the child to stop being scared. You just hold them with warmth and acceptance until they feel safe. We learn to hold our own fear in this same compassionate embrace. A simple and powerful technique is to breathe with the fear. As you breathe in, you can imagine your breath flowing into the area of tightness in your body, bringing it warmth and space. As you breathe out, you can imagine a gentle softening, a letting go around the edges of the sensation. Again, the goal is not to eliminate the feeling, but to change your relationship to it. You are moving from being a victim of the fear to being a caring companion to it. There is a profound alchemy in this practice. Fear, like a monster in a child's closet, derives its power from being unseen in the dark. It thrives on our unconsciousness, on the terrifying stories we spin in our minds. When we turn on the bright, steady flashlight of mindful awareness and shine it directly on the fear, it begins to lose its monstrous form. We see that this terrifying anxiety is actually just a collection of unpleasant but harmless physical sensations and a stream of impermanent, unreliable thoughts. When we look directly at it, its power to paralyze us diminishes. We see that we can, in fact, survive this feeling. It is uncomfortable, but it is not solid, and it is not who we are. This direct embodied practice is then supported by the wisdom of the path. We can actively remind ourselves of the truth of impermanence. This feeling of anxiety, no matter how intense, is not a permanent state. It is a cloud passing through the sky of our awareness. It arose, and it will cease. The future event we are so afraid of, even if it does come to pass, will also be an impermanent experience. This insight provides a vast perspective that helps us not to get so caught up in the drama of the moment. Even more powerfully, we can apply the wisdom of not self. We can ask in the midst of fear, who is it that is afraid? We can investigate the I that feels so threatened. As we see that this self is not a solid entity but a selfless process, the target for the fear begins to dissolve. If there is no fixed, permanent self to be harmed or embarrassed, the existential fuel for our anxiety begins to run out. The great Thai meditation master Ajahn Chah was a master at teaching this direct confrontation with fear. He would often send his newly ordained Western monks, who were accustomed to the comforts of the city, to go and meditate all night long, alone, in a dark and remote part of the forest. To their minds, the forest was filled with dangers, tigers, venomous snakes, and, according to local folklore, malevolent ghosts. Their initial experience was one of pure terror. Every rustle of a leaf was a tiger stalking them. Every shadow was a threatening spirit. Their minds, fueled by fear, created a horror movie more vivid than anything on a screen. Ajahn Chah's instruction was simple and unwavering. Don't run away. Just stay there. Watch your mind. See the fear. Know the fear. Forced to sit with their terror, unable to escape, the monks began to see something remarkable. They saw that the real tiger, the real ghost, was not outside them. It was inside them. The fear itself was the monster. It was being constructed, moment by moment, by their own runaway, imaginative minds. The forest was just the forest. The sounds were just sounds. By sitting still and looking directly at the fear, they saw its empty, illusory nature. They didn't destroy the fear. They understood it. They made friends with it. And in doing so, they found a fearlessness that could not be shaken. This is the invitation for all of us. We may not be in a literal jungle, but we all have the jungles of our own minds to contend with. We don't have to be prisoners of our anxiety. By learning to turn toward our fear with a mindful, embodied presence, by holding it with compassion, and by illuminating it with the light of wisdom, we can transform this great adversary into a source of profound strength. We learn that we are far more courageous than we believe. This inner work of transforming our own anger and fear is the essential foundation for a peaceful life. But we do not live in a vacuum. The same patterns of attachment and aversion that fuel our inner storms are the very things that create turmoil in our interactions with others. Having developed these tools for inner balance, the path now invites us to bring this clarity and compassion into the complex, beautiful, and often challenging dance of our relationships. This is the art of connection. The inner work we have done transforming our relationship with anger, making friends with our fears, the essential foundation for a peaceful life. But we do not live as solitary islands. Our existence is a rich and complex tapestry of connections. Our relationships with our partners, our families, our friends, and our colleagues are not a distraction from the spiritual path. They are its most potent and challenging practice ground. It is easy to feel peaceful and compassionate while sitting alone on a meditation cushion. The real test comes when our ideals meet the messy, unpredictable, and beautiful reality of human interaction. The principles of the path are not meant to be kept in a quiet sanctuary. They are meant to be lived, and it is in our relationships that they truly come alive. The first and most profound shift in perspective the path offers is the understanding that our relationships are mirrors. They reflect back to us, with unflinching accuracy, our own attachments, our own insecurities, our own unskillful habits, and our own unhealed wounds. When we feel irritation toward a partner's habit, we are seeing our own lack of patience. When we feel envy toward a friend's success, we are seeing our own sense of lack. When we feel a desperate need for another's approval, we are seeing our own inner emptiness. To see our relationships in this way is to transform them from a source of potential conflict into an invaluable field for self-discovery. Every moment of friction becomes an opportunity to learn something about ourselves. With this understanding, we can approach our relationships with a new foundation, one built on the radical act of taking responsibility for our own happiness. Our culture is saturated with the romantic myth that another person is supposed to complete us, that we are meant to find our other half who will be the source of our joy and the cure for our loneliness. This is a beautiful but dangerous fantasy. It is a form of tanha, a craving that places the key to our own well-being in someone else's pocket. This expectation is a recipe for suffering. It leads to disappointment when our partner inevitably fails to meet our impossible demands. It leads to resentment when they prioritize their own needs. It leads to a subtle but pervasive codependency, where two incomplete people try to lean on each other, often pulling both down. The path to true connection begins with finding our own center. It is the realization that our happiness is an inside job. When we are not looking to another person to fill our own inner void, we are free to love them for who they truly are, not for what we need them to be for us. We can appreciate their presence without clinging to it. We can support their freedom without feeling threatened. This is a gift of immense love, both to ourselves and to them. It allows the relationship to become a dance of two whole people, rather than a negotiation between two hungry ghosts. From this foundation of self-responsibility, we can begin to practice the art of connection using the tools we have cultivated. We bring right speech into our homes, transforming our communication. We practice deep listening, the art of offering our full, silent, and compassionate presence while another is speaking. We put down our phones, we make eye contact, and we listen with the sole intention of understanding, not of rebutting. We listen to the feelings behind the words. To make another person feel truly seen and heard is one of the most profound acts of love we can offer. We also practice loving speech, using words that are kind, truthful, and beneficial. We make an effort to express our appreciation and gratitude. When conflict arises, we learn to speak from our own experience using I statements, such as "I feel hurt when this happens," rather than launching accusations with "you always" or "you never." We also bring the wisdom of compassion to our understanding of others. We remember that our partner, our parent, our child, or our difficult colleague is also a human being struggling with their own dukkha. They too are caught in the grip of their own fears, insecurities, and conditioned habits. When they act in a way that is unskillful or hurtful, instead of meeting their anger with our own, we can train ourselves to look for the suffering behind their actions. This does not mean we condone or accept harmful behavior. We can still set clear boundaries. but our inner response can shift from one of reactive anger to one of compassionate understanding. This shift can fundamentally change the dynamic of a conflict. It is no longer a battle to be won, but a shared problem to be navigated with as much wisdom and kindness as we can muster. And perhaps most importantly, we bring the practice of letting go into our relationships. We are all carrying stories about the people in our lives, a catalogue of past mistakes, old resentments, and grievances we have held onto for years. These stories color our present moment interactions, preventing us from seeing the person who is in front of us right now. The practice is to learn to let these stories go, to forgive, and to meet each other in the fresh, open space of the present. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates this principle. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were traveling together and came to a river with a strong current. A beautiful young woman was standing there, afraid to cross. Without hesitation, the senior monk hoisted the woman onto his back, waded across the muddy river, and gently set her down on the other side. He then continued his journey. The junior monk was aghast. He was consumed with judgmental thoughts. We are monks. We have taken vows not to touch a woman. How could he do such a thing? It is a grave violation. For the next several hours, he walked in furious silence, his mind replaying the event over and over. Finally, as they approached their monastery that evening, the junior monk could contain himself no longer. He burst out, "Master, I cannot believe what you did today. You broke your sacred vows when you carried that woman across the river." The senior monk looked at his agitated companion, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "Brother," he said calmly, "I left that woman back at the riverbank hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This is a powerful teaching for all our relationships. So often, we are the junior monk. We carry the woman, the past hurt, the old argument, the remembered slight with us for hours, days, or even decades, allowing the poison of our own judgment and resentment to burden our hearts. The practice of wisdom in relationships is learning to leave the woman at the river. It is the art of letting go, of forgiving, and of understanding that holding on to anger is a punishment we inflict only upon ourselves. By taking responsibility for our own happiness, by communicating with mindfulness and compassion, by seeing the suffering in others, and by learning to let go of the past, we can transform our relationships from our greatest source of suffering into our most profound practice of love, connection, and mutual liberation. We have now journeyed from the noisy marketplace of the world to the quiet stillness of the concentrated mind. We have learned to work with our inner demons and to extend that wisdom to others. So where does this all lead? What is the final destination? The liberating surprise of the path is that the destination is not some far-off future state. The freedom we seek is not at the end of the road. It has been available all along, in every single step. The culmination of the path is the full and complete arrival in the only moment that ever truly exists, right here, right now. We have journeyed together through the vast and intricate landscape of the mind. We began by acknowledging the subtle but pervasive disquiet of modern life. We courageously diagnosed its nature as dukkha and traced its cause to the burning thirst of tanha. We were then given a map, the Noble Eightfold Path, and we have followed its winding trails through the territories of wisdom, the plains of ethical conduct, and the high mountains of mental discipline. We have learned to work with our anger and our fear, and to bring a new depth of kindness and understanding into our relationships. We have, in essence, traveled from the noisy, frantic marketplace of the world to the quiet, clear summit of the concentrated mind. And so we must ask the final question: where have we arrived? What is the ultimate goal of this long and profound journey? The beautiful, liberating, and perhaps surprising answer is that the goal is not a destination at all. The entire purpose of the path is not to arrive at some far-off future state of perfection. It is to arrive completely and utterly in the life that you have, in the body you have, in the world you have, right here and right now. The freedom the path offers is not an escape from reality. It is the courage to fully inhabit it. Our culture often imagines enlightenment or spiritual liberation, sometimes called nirvana, as a kind of blissful, heaven-like paradise one enters after death, a final reward for a life of spiritual struggle. This is a profound misunderstanding. The word nirvana literally means to extinguish or to unbind. It is not a place you go to, it is a psychological state you can realize in this very life. What is extinguished? The three fires that fuel all our suffering, the fire of greed and grasping, the fire of hatred and aversion, and the fire of ignorance and delusion. When the fuel of craving is no longer supplied, these fires simply go out. What remains is not a void, but the mind's natural, uncovered state, a state of unshakable peace, boundless compassion, and radiant clarity. Every moment that you are free from the grip of greed, every moment you are free from the poison of ill will, every moment you see things with clarity rather than confusion, that moment is a taste of nirvana. It is available to you, in varying degrees, right now. This points to a radically different definition of happiness than the one we are usually sold. The world's model of happiness is based on addition. It tells us we will be happy when we get something more money, more recognition, a better partner, a new experience. This form of happiness is inherently fragile, stressful, and unsustainable because it depends on external conditions that are, by their very nature, impermanent. The path offers a happiness based on subtraction. It is not about getting everything you want. It is about the profound peace that comes from being freed from the compulsive, exhausting, and insatiable need to want. It is the contentment that arises when the thirsty, restless mind finally comes to rest. This is a secure and reliable form of well-being, for it is generated from within and cannot be taken away by changing fortunes. This means that the practice is never truly over. It is not a course you can complete or a mountain you can conquer once and for all. It is a way of life, a daily commitment to returning to ourselves. To think we can finish the practice is like thinking we can eat one healthy meal and be nourished for the rest of our lives. The mind, like the body, requires continuous, gentle care. Every day, every moment is a new opportunity to begin again. Every breath is a chance to come home to the present. Every interaction is a chance to practice compassion. There is no final failure on this path, only the next moment and the next choice to be mindful, to be kind, to be wise. This transforms the path from an intimidating ascent into a lifelong, compassionate friend. There is an old story of a man who spent his entire life seeking the great treasure of enlightenment. He left his home and his family and traveled the world. He studied with famous gurus in remote ashrams. He practiced extreme austerities in freezing caves, and he made pilgrimages to the most sacred and ancient temples. He learned many fascinating things. He had many strange experiences, but the profound peace and freedom he sought always eluded him. Finally, old, weary, and disheartened, he gave up the search. He decided to make the long journey back to the simple village where he was born. He walked for months, and upon arriving, he saw that nothing much had changed. He entered his old, humble home and sat down in his familiar chair. He was exhausted. He had nothing left. He had nowhere else to go and nothing else to seek. In that moment of complete surrender, with no hope and no agenda, he took one simple breath. And in the stillness of that one breath, in the quiet of his own home, he found it. The peace, the freedom, the treasure he had circled the entire globe to find had been waiting for him right there all along. It was not hidden on some distant mountain. It was hidden in the simple reality of the present moment, in the very fabric of his own being. He had to travel the whole world just to realize he never had to take a single step. This is the ultimate secret of the path. The peace we seek is not in a different place or a different time. It is not contingent on our circumstances becoming perfect. True peace is the capacity to meet life as it is, with all of its beauty and its chaos, its joys and its sorrows, with a heart that is open and a mind that is quiet. It is the freedom that is discovered when we stop running from the present moment and finally agree to be fully here for it. The great journey outward becomes the great journey inward, and the journey inward leads us directly back to the heart of this and every moment. The path does not lead to a distant peak, but reveals the sacredness of the ground beneath our very feet. And so, we have arrived where we began, but with new eyes. Having walked this path together, from the recognition of our disquiet to the possibility of this present moment freedom, Let us now pause, take a breath, and gather the wisdom of this journey, seeing how it provides a compass not just for meditation, but for a life lived with grace, clarity, and a deep and quiet heart. We began this journey together in the heart of the modern condition, adrift in a sea of noise, feeling the weight of a restless and anxious world. We started with the courageous admission that something felt incomplete, that the endless pursuit of happiness on the outside was leaving us empty on the inside. From that honest starting place, we walked an ancient path. We looked directly at the nature of our universal dissatisfaction, our dukkha, and we found its source not in the world, but in the grasping and aversion of our own minds. We were then given a map, the Noble Eightfold Path, a guide to a life of wisdom, ethical integrity, and mental cultivation. We learned to see the world with new eyes, recognizing the profound truths of impermanence and the selfless nature of existence. We learned to tend the garden of our minds, planting seeds of kindness and compassion. We learned to use our speech, our actions, and even our work as expressions of our deepest values. We learned to sit with the inner storms of anger and fear, not as victims, but as wise and compassionate friends. And finally, we discovered that the entire journey was leading us back to the one place we had been trying to escape, the simple, profound, and liberating reality of the present moment. The core message of this entire journey can be distilled into two simple truths. The first is, you are not alone. You are not alone in your suffering, for it is the shared condition of all beings who have not yet seen the true nature of things. And you are not alone on the path to peace, for this wisdom is a timeless inheritance, available to all. More deeply, the very feeling of being a separate, isolated self is the illusion we seek to overcome. In reality, you are inextricably connected to all of life, a single wave in a vast and sacred ocean. The second truth is this: peace is not a destination. It is not a prize you win at the end of a long struggle. It is a quality of being that you cultivate within. It is the natural state of a mind that has learned to let go of its frantic craving and its fearful resistance. Peace is the quiet space you can learn to inhabit even when the world around you is in turmoil. It is not the absence of waves on the surface, but the discovery of the deep, unshakable stillness of the ocean's depths. You leave this journey now with everything you need. The tools are not external, they have been with you all along. Your own breath is your most faithful anchor, always ready to bring you home to the present moment. Your own awareness is the light that can illuminate any darkness, and your own heart holds an infinite capacity for a compassion that can heal both yourself and the world. The path is not about becoming someone different. It is about gently, patiently, and kindly removing all the layers of fear and confusion that obscure the wise, peaceful, and loving being that you already are. The silence was always there, beneath the noise. You are, and have always been, the one who knows.